continue to follow developments after a van has struck several people on the sidewalk in Barcelona. Again, no word from the Spanish authorities whether this was an accident or whether this was something more, but ABC News law enforcement consultant Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, is with us because, Steve, if this turns out to be what we've seen in the past, it would be a part of a troubling trend.
Exactly. It would be definitely a problem and a trend that we've been seeing all over Europe. We've seen it at least one time here in the U.S. We don't, very early in the investigation, we don't know exactly what's happening, but it fits the pattern that ISIS has used in other attacks, using a vehicle, targeting large crowds, a lot of pedestrians. This looks like the kind of location that they would have looked at and said, yes, this is a perfect target for us. A lot of people looking at their phones, walking around. There's a subway near there, so there's going to be, a number of people coming out of the subway. So the crowds are going to be immense, and that's a perfect target for them if that is what is taking place here.
And we're still waiting to find out from Spanish authorities. ABC News consultant Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI. I want to turn to the ABC News foreign desk in London. ABC's Tom Rivers is there. Tom, what are you learning?
Yeah, we're getting some footage over right now, Erin, and we hear from individuals there on the square as well that the area, as you can well imagine, cordoned off. Local subway station, train station, been shut down at least temporarily. And again, we're not hearing reports at this stage of any kind of causal factor on this at all. But this is how they all begin. At this stage, though, the police were there very, very quickly. And at this stage, we don't know exactly the motivation or what might have happened, but we'll keep following this as it progresses.
ABC's Tom Rivers at our foreign desk in London. Police in Barcelona say a white van has jumped the sidewalk in the historic Las Ramblas district. There are several people potentially injured, and nobody that we've been told been confirmed killed, but there are a number of people that are said to have been injured. The images that we're seeing show an area that would be crowded with tourists at 5 o'clock in the evening or so, 5:30 in the evening, simply desolate with everybody pushed to the side as police cordon off the area, tend to those who were injured, and try to figure out what went on. ABC's Scott Goldberg just back from Barcelona. You know well how densely packed this place is.
Yeah, Erin, and this is an area that isn't just a transit hub, isn't just a popular plaza, but it separates a couple of neighborhoods to which tourists would flock. The Gothic Quarter in Barcelona, another area called the Raval that's kind of a grittier, up-and-coming bohemian neighborhood, and lots of hotels are on this strip as well. It's a place where a couple of weeks ago I met up with a tour group that was going outside of the city. They picked people up and dropped them off from Plaza Catalunya. So this is indeed an area that would have been the most densely packed, the most crowded in, like I said before, a city in Europe that draws more tourists, especially this time of year, than just about any other. So this certainly is a place that would have been vulnerable. There aren't really any barriers that separate the streets or separate the traffic from the pedestrian mall, Las Ramblas, or Plaza Catalunya itself, where I think this happened according to the early reports. So a popular place in a popular city and a popular time of day.
It's ABC's Scott Goldberg just back from Barcelona, where the police have cordoned off an area in the historic Las Ramblas district after a white van struck a number of people up on the sidewalk. There's no word from the Spanish authorities whether this was a deliberate act or whether this was simply an accident, but we're seeing some people in the area now beginning to move more freely, even as we see Spanish police have moved in and the emergency services have moved in to tend to the injured and also block what would otherwise be a very crowded street. There were a number of people that folks on social media said were lying on the ground, and at this point it could be something malicious and deliberate, or it could simply be an accident. It's unclear at this point. We haven't heard from Spanish authorities, but as we watch this, I want to turn to Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI and now an ABC News consultant. Steve, as ever, we watch and wait for some kind of motive, but it isn't hard to think of this as a potential act of terrorism.
Exactly, and the law enforcement agencies there in Spain, they're going to approach it in that manner. They're going to think that we have a potential terrorist attack similar to what we've seen all throughout Europe, and they're going to handle it accordingly based on that initial premise. And then if it is determined that it was an accident or there was something else that happened, then at that point they'll scale back the posture of their investigation to what would be either a different type of accident resulting in injuries or something other than terrorism. But they will initially go into it thinking terrorism. And it's interesting, Erin, we haven't seen a whole lot of terror attacks in Spain, but there were the major attacks that occurred at the train stations in Madrid several years ago. So Spain isn't foreign to this type of situation, but we haven't seen that much in Spain in quite some time.
ABC's law enforcement consultant Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, with us as we continue to follow developments out of Barcelona, where a white van jumped the sidewalk in Catalunya Square, hit a number of pedestrians. We're told there are injuries but no deaths, and we are awaiting some additional information from the Spanish authorities. I want to turn to our foreign desk again. ABC's Tom Rivers is there. Anything more on your end, Tom?
Yes, we're watching some live pictures now, Erin, and it actually looks fairly calm, believe it or not. We understand that the police got there very, very quickly, as Steve was saying too, unknowing exactly what was going on. But eyewitnesses said the police had hopped out of their vehicles within literally a minute or two, had drawn pistols with them, not sure exactly what they were looking at. But we've been told that a number of the people have been told to just get out of the area for now as the police and the ambulances do their work.
ABC's Tom Rivers at our foreign desk in London. We've seen images of people on the ground in Catalunya Square being helped by police and others from the emergency services. The broad street, Las Ramblas, is all cordoned off. Some of the stores and coffee shops or whatever are all shut down, but there are in different places of that street people walking freely. It's hard to see specifically what has gone on other than a van jumped the sidewalk, struck some pedestrians, and they're now being tended to in the area. But Spanish police have not said specifically whether this was an accident or something more. I want to turn back to Scott Goldberg of ABC News, who's just back from Barcelona and knows that city quite well. Steve Gomez alluded to this, Scott, that Spain has not been immune from terrorism, if in fact this is what turns out to be. But it also hasn't been the hotbed that other cities in Europe have been.
No, and Barcelona, the capital of the Catalunya region, it's, there's a succession vote actually coming up there, and they've had it in the past. It's failed, but it's always the talk there. The football club based there, FC Barcelona represents the region and this idea that Catalunya should be its own nation. So politically, it's always active, and there are discussions like that. But historically, when you think of terror attacks in Spain, you would think of País Vasco, the Basque region, and even that, you have to go back years to actually have that kind of activity.
But in Catalunya Square specifically, I mean, this is not very few cars go through Las Ramblas, right? This is more a pedestrian mall.
Right. Plaza Catalunya, which sits at the north end of Las Ramblas, there is traffic, so cars would be circling it, and if someone were determined to drive into the plaza itself, there's nothing to stop it.
ABC Scott Goldberg following developments with us. Barcelona is the scene of a white van jumping the sidewalk and hitting a number of pedestrians whom we've seen through social media images lying on the ground being tended to by police. They were there very quickly. Police have blocked off this portion of Las Ramblas, and they're milling about now trying to control pedestrians, extending crime tape across the sidewalk and trying to move as many people out as possible. The Spanish authorities have not said whether this was an accident or whether this is something more sinister than that, but we are waiting for any additional information. Police in Barcelona have only said that a white van jumped the sidewalk in Las Ramblas, in this historic district, injuring several people. We're told, though, by Spanish police there have not been any deaths, but they are asking people to stay away so they don't get in the way of emergency services. And you can hear in the background just people milling about, trying as we are to figure out what has happened in one of the city's top tourist destinations. ABC's Tom Rivers at our foreign desk in London. Tom?
Exactly, Erin. And you're driver right now. A lot of people asking that. We have not been told. The authorities have not come forward with that kind of information yet. And again, it is a situation where people are just being asked to get out of there, get out of the immediate area, and a lot of police in that area very, very quickly. Reinforcements have arrived as well, so they are probably fanning out as we speak and seeing if they can find whoever might have been behind the wheel. It could have been an accident, as we've said earlier. It could have been something much more sinister that we've seen played out in a number of countries here over the past couple of years.
But, Tom, you say the driver's not in custody.
That's what we understand at this stage. Exactly.
All right, so the driver of the van that jumped onto the sidewalk in Las Ramblas and hit pedestrians does not appear to be in custody. Police are looking for him. They've shut down, where it is, the subways that run beneath this district in Barcelona, and they have tried to keep a number of pedestrians away from the scene. They've just stretched out some crime tape across the sidewalk to keep pedestrians away. They had already blocked off the street to keep any vehicles away. And we have heard from eyewitnesses that some may be, in fact, locked inside a nearby church or told to stay where they are as police now try to search for the driver of a white van that hit a number of pedestrians up onto the sidewalk in Catalunya Square. This is in the heart of Barcelona, a heavily packed, densely packed tourist area. And police have cordoned off the broad street, shut down stores along the way as they try to figure out what has happened. ABC News consultant Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, is watching along with us. And Brad, despite understanding what this actually is, it certainly well could fit what we've seen in other European and American cities.
Well, of course. Is this another sort of ISIS-inspired car ramming or not? One of the obvious things you would check, assuming we don't know where the driver is and he's not in custody, is where did the van come from? Historically, they have stolen vans or trucks shortly before they commit these acts. Does this truck fall into that profile, or was this truck on routine delivery and something went amiss? That's still unknown at this point.
Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. The police were on scene, Brad, very quickly shutting down the street. Apparently the driver is missing or fled, so I guess that's priority one.
Of course it's priority one. But, you and I don't know any more about the circumstances or dynamics of this ramming. So, he could have fled for a number of reasons. The obvious is that, he's a terrorist and was trying to harm people, or he's just scared because he's committed an act and he's departed. So, once we know the following, was this just a curb jump, or is this somebody who accelerated, went up on the curb or up on the sidewalk, mowed down X number of people, got out of the truck and walked off? That's a different story than I lost control of my truck and it jumped off the curb.
Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant, watching along with us as we await additional information from Spanish authorities after a white van jumped onto the sidewalk and struck pedestrians in Catalunya Square at one end of Las Ramblas, this historic tourist district packed with people at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, local time. I'm Erin Katersky, and you're listening to live coverage from ABC News. ABC's Scott Goldberg is just back from Barcelona and monitoring some of the Spanish media. Anything more that we're learning, Scott?
Well, Erin, no. I've seen some reports and pictures of police cars actually driving on what looks to be like the pedestrian part of La Rambla, where normally you wouldn't have traffic. So police are responding enforce. This also would be an area where lots of police would have been to begin with. So from a response standpoint, yes, you would have had a lot of, in this area of Barcelona, in the heart of Barcelona, as you said, you would have a lot of tourists, a lot of people getting out of work at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the evening. Would have been very busy, but you also would have had a massive police presence already there. So if, in fact, a driver is on the loose, he would not have been able to get very far, and you have a lot of police right there looking for him or her.
ABC's Scott Goldberg, who's just back from Barcelona, with us after a van plowed into crowds in Barcelona's Ramblas tourist area. Spanish police said several people had been injured, and emergency services have urged people to stay away from the area around Catalunya Square. It seems, according to eyewitness accounts that we're seeing on social media, that people are taking cover in nearby shops and churches and cafes. Emergency services have blocked off the road. They've stretched tape across the sidewalk. And this area, at 5 o'clock, now 5:45 in the afternoon, packed with tourists and others on an August evening. And if this was, in fact, something sinister, it was a ripe target. And now those people that were there have either been told to leave by police, or they're taking cover in nearby shops, cafes, and churches while the authorities search for the driver of the van. Multiple reports say seems to have fled on foot after striking pedestrians in the heart of Barcelona. ABC's Tom Rivers following with us from our foreign desk in London. Tom.
Yes, Erin, and tying in with that manhunt now, if we can call it that, it looks like the subway system in that area has been shut down, so they're trying to break that avenue of getting out of there, if that is in fact the case, if it's a tourist attack, et cetera, et cetera. So again, everything's shut down in that immediate area. It is now time to go home for some of the people in those areas, those retail shops, et cetera, and they're going to probably have to find alternative ways of getting home tonight.
ABC's Tom Rivers with us from our foreign desk in London. There are a number of reports coming from the Reuters news agency now that a couple of armed men have entered a restaurant in the area where this van has crashed into pedestrians. It's unclear whether they're authorities or not, but what's also unclear is whether these are related, and we still wait for additional information from the Spanish authorities. ABC's Scott Goldberg doing his best to follow along too. Scott?
And I'm looking at some reports out of Barcelona, Erin, and La Vanguardia, a major newspaper there, is reporting that this actually started in Plaza Catalunya, a big pedestrian area right on top on the north end of Las Ramblas, and then it continued down onto that major boulevard that goes all the way down to the waterfront through the heart of Barcelona. So it started in that plaza, went on to La Rambla. It says that that area has been evacuated, as we've been reporting, that a lot of stores are closed. The subway and some commuter rail lines in that area are closed as well. They don't know who's responsible for this or the total number of people hurt is what we're seeing, latest reports from Barcelona, Catalan media.
ABC's Scott Goldberg with us. I'm Erin Katersky. You're listening to live coverage from ABC News. A white van has jumped onto the sidewalk and struck pedestrians in Catalonia Square in the heart of Barcelona's tourist district. The police have shut down the area. They've stopped the subways, and they have said that a number of people have been injured, but it's unclear that anybody has been killed. The driver of the van is said to have fled on foot, and so they're looking for him now. And the Reuters news agency saying that the two men have entered into a restaurant with guns. There are other reports from coming from the scene that this was now being classified as something intentional, although we still haven't had official word as to whether this was an intentional act, some kind of terror attack, or whether it was an accident. And so authorities are trying to sort through all of this. ABC's news consultant Steve Gomez is with us, our law enforcement consultant. Steve, what do you think?
Okay, a lot to chew on here, Erin. So what we now have is there's a manhunt because driver is not in custody. We don't know how many people were in that van, and now we're getting reports that there are potentially 2 people armed in a restaurant in the nearby area. So again, this comes right out of the playbook that we saw with the London Bridge, where the truck or the car hit a bunch of people at the bridge, and then you had a bunch of people that were with knives attacking people at a bar. This is very similar, sounding like the same playbook. So law enforcement has to approach it in the same manner. They have to be thinking, again, terror attack. We got to respond right away, whether it's the same driver or the same people from the van that then escaped and now have guns, or maybe somebody else. And this was all part of a distraction. Vehicle attack first, and now you start going after people.
ABC News law enforcement consultant Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI. Let me bring Brad Garrett into our conversation, another former FBI agent who's an ABC News consultant, as more Spanish media are starting to call this intentional as this manhunt continues for the driver. What's the best approach here, Brad?
Well, the key is, who do they know is in Barcelona? I mean, Spain has a history of some pretty nefarious characters. So what does the intel give them? And as I mentioned to you a few minutes ago, Erin, where does the van lead them? Where does the tag and a history of a van being stolen, missing, etc., because that's going to give you some potential leads, maybe who has it. As we all know, when things like this happen, we get oversensitized as to who has guns and who doesn't. Now, the restaurant could well be 2 bad guys, but I think we're going to hear about that shortly, if in fact they went there to harm people, or was it armed cops going in looking for them. So we'll have to see where that goes. But going back to what was the speed and length of this ramming really tells you a lot about probably what the real intent was.
All right, but wait to learn all of those details. ABC's Brad Garrett following with us, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant, after a van struck a crowd in Barcelona with several people injured, police say. ABC News producer Will Gretzky happens to be in Barcelona and near the scene of all of this. Will, where are you? What do you see?
Hey, Erin. I am right on Passeig del Gracia, which is one of the main strips. They kind of consider it their Fifth Avenue here in Barcelona. It seems like everybody is being told to go back to their apartments, go back to their hotels. A lot of the restaurants, a lot of the tapas restaurants have closed their doors and asked people not to sit outside. There are quite a few police helicopters circling the air right now, and the main square where I believe this happened has been completely roped off, and the police are asking people to avoid the area.
We're speaking with Will Gretzky, who's an ABC News producer who happens to be in Barcelona, now near the scene of where a van has jumped onto the sidewalk in Catalunya Square and run down pedestrians in the area. Will, the area you're in, I imagine at the time, about 5 o'clock in the evening when this happened on an August night, had to be packed with people.
Yeah, it's completely packed. This is right when a lot of the cruise ships let a lot of people off. So La Rambla, which is where that plaza starts, was completely packed with people. And it's usually no cars can really go down there, so it was completely packed.
Will Gretzky is an ABC News producer who's now in Barcelona and speaking to us as we try to sort out what has happened in the heart of the city. At 5 o'clock in the evening on an August night, a van jumped the sidewalk into pedestrians, and now there is a search for the van driver who appears to have fled on foot. The summer crowd of residents and tourists is now locked down. People were seen lying on the ground, right on the pavement, being held by police. Others, as Will described, have been told to go home. Still, other eyewitnesses have reported that they are locked inside a cafe or a restaurant or even a church as they try to sort out what has happened. There are reports that the 2 men armed men were seen entering a restaurant, although that has not been independently confirmed by ABC News. And we are still waiting to see what the Spanish authorities think this actually was. There are a number of local reports that this was, in fact, an intentional act and not an accident, but we're still waiting for more details in that regard. Will, as we try to figure all of this out, what else are you seeing from your vantage point?
This is an ABC News special report.
Good afternoon, I'm Tom Yamas. We are following breaking news out of Barcelona in Spain, what may be a possible terror attack. This happened just moments ago in what's being reported as a possible truck attack, a truck ramming over pedestrians in the middle of one of Barcelona's busiest plazas. Our chief foreign correspondent, Terry Moran, has been monitoring all the news out of Europe and out of this area right now. Terry, what can you tell us?
Well, Tom, what we've got right now is reports from Barcelona that a large white van crashed into a crowd along Las Ramblas, which is one of the most popular tourist districts in the heart of Barcelona, as you say, and slammed into pedestrians on that famous boulevard. There are many injured, according to police, and there are reports that at least one of the people associated with this van has escaped on foot. There were also reports that two armed men have entered a restaurant nearby. That is unconfirmed as of right now, but this is a fluid situation. What is clearly now a signature kind of attack. It looks like this was a deliberate act in the heart of Barcelona, in one of the most crowded tourist districts. Also a lot of government workers around there, restaurants, artists. If anybody's ever been to Barcelona, you've walked down that boulevard. And as you can see, it is a mess right now. There are emergency workers on the scene. Reports coming out that many of those stores and restaurants and hotels are on lockdown. People fled inside. The doors have been locked. Police telling residents and others around Barcelona not to go to that neighborhood. This is an ongoing scene. Once again, a white van, it is described, at plowing into a crowd of pedestrians in the Las Ramblas district, La Rambla, the boulevard there, and near Catalonia Square. And it looks like this is a situation which is going to go on for a little bit.
5:59 p.m. in Barcelona, so plenty of people likely in that plaza at the time. The Catalonian emergency services have shut down the subways. We do know they've been told to shelter in place, and they're also telling anyone who is in that area, tourists or people who live there, to call their family members to let them know that they are okay. We're going to be monitoring this situation throughout the afternoon, and we'll have a full report later on World News Tonight with David Muir. We thank you so much for tuning in. We now return to our scheduled programming.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Hard to kind of see what the scene looks like because the police have been driving along the sidewalk with their megaphones asking people to please clear the sidewalk. And I am now inside a building where I'm being asked to stay because they really want people to stay off the sidewalks because they may be afraid of something else happening, but everyone is clearing the sidewalks right now as we speak on the main avenues in Barcelona.
All right, Will, then stay safe, and we'll let you go so that you can do what you're being told from Barcelona police. They are telling people to stay where they are unless told otherwise, and so ABC News producer Will Gretzky is going to be taking cover in the restaurant or shop where he is and where he was speaking to us. The van that ran into the crowd in Barcelona has come to rest. You could see some of the damage from social media images, and you could see a number of people in these images that were lying on the pavement being tended to. Officially, we're told there are multiple people injured. There are local reports of deaths, but those have not been independently confirmed by ABC News. ABC's Scott Goldberg, who's just back from Barcelona, following along. What are you hearing, Scott?
Well, I've been checking in with friends primarily to see if they're okay, and thankfully they are. They're hearing different reports. There are some local reports of hostages being held. Those have not been confirmed, of course, and as we've been reporting, it's not clear whether the people with guns who were seen running into a restaurant were people fleeing from the van after abandoning it, or if those might have been law enforcement authorities. So it seems like there is as much confusion still on the ground. Again, Erin, just for our listeners so they know, this is a very busy, densely packed packed, popular place in the heart of Barcelona. I would compare it to this area, to the Champs-Élysées in Paris, maybe even a scaled-down version of Times Square here in New York, because you have the coming together of major avenues. Las Ramblas, that's a major pedestrian fair that goes from Plaza Catalunya, where this incident began, down to the waterfront. Always packed with people, especially this time of day, 5:30. And it's also a business district as well, so people would have been leaving work at the same time when this happened.
ABC's Scott Goldberg, the U.S. consulate in Barcelona, has asked Americans that are there to avoid the area, and we are hearing from other American officials who are following the developments. The NYPD Counterterrorism Division said it is closely monitoring the developments in Barcelona. It would not be surprising if this does turn out to be a terror attack to see police in American cities adjust accordingly if there's anything there to be done. I want to turn in that regard to ABC News consultant Steve Gomez, Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI. Brad, based on some of this local reporting and what we've been able to confirm, what do we have here?
Well, if you ask me, guess, it probably is something similar or is a terrorist attack, and I tell you why, is that you have to look at the timing of this. As Will reported to you, it's a super busy time in that part of Barcelona as far as tourists. Probably a fair number of Westerners are there. Maximum number of people maybe on the street. So could be an accident still. But when you add those elements, because obviously these car rammers look for what's the best target, what's going to get me the most publicity and possibly the most casualties, and it's going to be like on a Friday night in a tourist area of a major city. So we'll have to see, and we'll also have to see if the two armed men going into a restaurant play into this. But as I mentioned earlier, if in fact those are bad guys connected to this van, I suspect whatever they're going to do will be in short order.
ABC's consultant Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI. Brad, you mentioned the optics of it all that lead one to believe, or one down the path that this could be a terror attack. Spain has certainly not been immune, but has not been the hotbed that some other parts of Europe have been.
That is true. But again, you have to look where the attack occurred. And, the odds are you're going to kill or harm people from other parts of the world, and you're going to potentially harm the economy of Spain, which is a common theme in why they commit these acts. Terror is the first thing. But the other is that the financial detriment when these happen, as far as businesses, as far as you and I and others, and Will, going to Barcelona for vacation or stopping by, or cruise ships letting people off there, which is all obviously good for the economy, all of this stuff adversely affects that. And that's the other thing they're trying to do. They try to turn, obviously, more people to think like they think. And the more they believe in their mind that they can harm, quote unquote, the enemy, the better for them.
ABC News consultant Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, after a van struck pedestrians in Catalonia Square. Eyewitnesses said it was like a car going through a cornfield and trying to knock people down, as we await more information from the Spanish authorities. So stay with us. This is live coverage from ABC News. I'm Erin Katursky. A van has jumped the sidewalk in the heart of Barcelona, Catalonia Square, and has knocked down a number of pedestrians who are said to be injured. Local reports are talking about deaths, but those have not been independently confirmed by ABC News. Plaza Catalunya train station is closed. A number of eyewitnesses, including an ABC News producer in the area, have been told to stay put in the restaurant or church or cafe where they happen to have been. Other pedestrians have been moved away from the scene, and a large portion of Las Ramblas has now been blocked off. Police said that the van struck these pedestrians, and then the driver, it appears, has fled on foot. There is now a manhunt underway, and local reports of 2 armed individuals heading into a restaurant, though who exactly they are was not made clear. Local reports also suggest this was something intentional, leading one toward a conclusion of a terror attack, although the Spanish police have not yet said whether this was intentional or whether it was an accident. ABC's Scott Goldberg is just back from Barcelona. He's been checking on some of the Spanish media reporting, checking in with friends in the city. What have you learned?
Well, it's a very scary evening in Barcelona, Erin. This is Plaza Catalunya is a place that would have been absolutely crammed with tourists and people getting out of work at this time of day. These are often people I observed when I was there who are looking at maps, looking at their phones, not necessarily paying attention to their surroundings. So if someone wanted to cause a lot of carnage with this kind of vehicular attack, this would have been a good place to do it, regardless of what a motive might have been. If you were thinking of harming a lot of people in one place in Europe this time of year, Plaza Catalunya in Barcelona would have been an obvious place to think about.
Yeah, and in fact, we should say, just because we talk terror doesn't necessarily mean ISIS, given Spain's history with separatists and other groups.
Right, and there is a lot of heated political debate, particularly in this region of Spain, where they speak their own language. They speak Catalan first and foremost, and begrudgingly Spanish, if you want to speak that language with them. There is current talk of secession. There's another vote coming up. The recent votes have failed, but Catalunya often sees itself as an independent nation. That said, it has not been a hotbed of terrorist activity, political activity. Yes, when you think of historic terrorism in Spain, it is outside of Catalunya, but this certainly is an area of often heated political debate.
ABC's Scott Goldberg, who himself is just back from Barcelona, where a white van has jumped onto the sidewalk and struck pedestrians in Catalonia Square. Spain's leading newspaper, citing unnamed police sources, now says that the perpetrators of this van incident are holed up in a bar on Las Ramblas, which explains why they've cordoned off such a large area. We have also seen images of police standing over what could be bodies, though officially no deaths have been confirmed, after this white van jumped the sidewalk in the Las Ramblas district, crashing into a summer crowd of residents and tourists and injuring several people. There are a number of those people lying on the ground, and we've seen them being helped by police and other emergency services, and there does appear to be a manhunt underway, with eyewitnesses reporting that they had seen armed people entering the restaurant. Spain's leading newspaper does say that the perpetrators of this van attack, as they put it, were seen being holed up in a restaurant. So we don't know whether there's now going to be some kind of barricade situation or what. But we're following with ABC News consultant Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI. Brad, if it's in fact true that they now have these guys cornered, it does lead to some conclusions.
It does, and it also gives the folks that created this, ISIS or whoever inspired it, another venue or activity to get attention. So, assuming that's them in the restaurant, do we now have a hostage barricade? Do we get into negotiation? Do they start harming people in the restaurant? This is going to take, my guess, a while to unfold. But it's just another element of you create one set or create chaos in one part of Barcelona, and then you just move it on down to create another. I suppose very similar to, I think Steve mentioned it earlier, of car rammings and then people get out with knives and start stabbing people. So this could be a variation of that very theme.
Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant, as we follow developments out of Barcelona, where a white van has jumped the sidewalk and struck pedestrians. Exactly how many is not clear. but there are several injured officially, according to Spanish police. It is less clear whether there are deaths. A number of local reports have said that there are at least a couple of deaths in this, although those have not been independently confirmed by ABC News. We are also following reports from Spain's leading newspaper, which quoted unnamed police sources as saying the perpetrators of the crash were holed up in a bar nearby. No immediate police confirmation, but there's certainly a wide cordon around the area, and a number of pedestrians that have been told, if they can, evacuate. But more eyewitnesses who's told us that they have been told to stay put if, in fact, they do have the perpetrators of this van crash surrounded. Let me turn back to the foreign desk for a moment with ABC's Tom Rivers, who's in London and monitoring these developments with us. Tom, what do you know?
Exactly the same, Erin, and it's a curious parallel if you think back to the London Bridge attack. If, in fact, there was a number of people in this van, mowed some people down, and then we know that at least the driver had fled. Maybe there's an accomplice there. Are these the same individuals that are in this bar now? That a number of the local reporters are saying they've taken over a bar in that immediate area. And, again, we could see a situation where people could be attacked in that bar. Again, this thing is far from over. There's so many police, at least in the feeds we're seeing coming over the desk right now, police just about on every square inch of this square. And, again, they're going to bolt this thing down as quickly as they possibly can. They've cut down transportation links, the subway system, trains, etc., cordoned off, a wide cordon now. And people, because seems very, very prudent, if people are out there, they're saying, look, go back to your homes, hotels, whatever, and just stay put for a while until things settle down.
ABC's Tom Rivers at our foreign desk in London, following with us the developments in Barcelona, where a van has struck a number of pedestrians in a densely packed Catalonia square. This all happened at about 5 o'clock in the evening, local time, on an August night when this place would have been packed with people, but all of the shops and restaurants in the area have been told to close. Where people were held up, they've been told to just stay put. As Tom mentioned, the subway beneath has stopped running. Police may have a situation where the driver of the van and a possible accomplice are holed up in a restaurant nearby. ABC News consultant John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security, is with us. John, what are your impressions of what's gone on so far?
Well, Erin, as we've discussed in other incidents in the past, the first thing law enforcement will do is clear the streets, try to gain control of the immediate situation. That means putting these people, the alleged drivers, getting them into custody, making sure there's no other accomplices, mitigate any other threats that may be associated with the van. They'll check to make sure there's no explosives. But I think, as Brad was saying a little bit earlier, they're going to also make sure that there aren't secondary attacks or any type of secondary threat that may exist in the area. So they'll probably beef up presence not only in the immediate area, but also around transportation hubs and other places where tourists congregate.
John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security, now an ABC News consultant, watching Barcelona with us, as police have a wide area of Las Ramblas cordoned off. A number of other emergency responders have been tending to those who were struck by a white van that appears to have jumped onto the sidewalk and struck these pedestrians. Local reports have spoken of deaths. None have been independently confirmed by ABC News, nor has a particular motive here. Spanish police have yet to characterize this as an attack or as an accident. They still seem to be putting the priority on finding the driver, who may have fled with a possible accomplice into a nearby restaurant. All of the local businesses in the area, and there are a number of them, have been ordered to close. And the people that were in the area have been ordered to go away, or in some instances, have been told to just stay put. Our own ABC News producer has, who's there on vacation, told us after speaking with us for a while that he is being told to stay indoors and stay put, so he'll let him remain safe. ABC's Scott Goldberg is just back from Barcelona and poking around with friends and others. What are you finding, Scott?
Well, Erin, it's still a confusing scene in Barcelona. Most of the reports are going out of their way to say authorities haven't confirmed this or that. Dozens hurt seems to be the consensus reporting. There are reports unconfirmed of 2 people killed, reports of hostages, again, unconfirmed. We've seen some video on social media, as you've pointed out, of people sprawled out along Las Ramblas, along the sidewalks in the heart of Barcelona, and some of the video looks graphic. People are injured pretty badly. Hard to tell the exact extent of injuries, although some bones look visibly broken from what we've been able to tell. Again, just to repeat, if you were someone who wanted to get a lot of attention and do a lot of damage with this kind of vehicular attack, and you're in Europe, this would be maybe the first location that's top of mind, because Barcelona is so wildly popular with tourists, especially in August, and this part of the city in particular at this time of day would have been absolutely packed. ABC's Scott Goldberg with us. Check out Scott El País, because the newspaper, Spain's leading newspaper, is now reporting that Barcelona police are treating this as a terror attack. And I want to bring back John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security. It certainly has the hallmarks of one, John.
No, that's right, Erin. And I think especially based on the fact that a number of European cities over the past year have experienced attacks such as this, or incidents such as this, that turned out to be terrorist attacks, the default position of police is going to be that they're going to treat this like a terrorist attack. But again, once they gain control of the scene, they start an investigation, they'll be better able to determine the motive behind this, whether it was a terrorist attack, was it a terrorist attack by someone inspired by Al-Qaeda or ISIS or a part of those groups? Was it a Basque separatist operation who've been active in the past in this part of Spain? Of late, there have been reports that there have been groups of what they're calling anti-tourist vigilantes who have been threatening to take actions to prevent, or reduce tourism in the area for some reason. So it's a complicated environment. The first priority for law enforcement is to gain control of the immediate threat. They can then begin their investigation, and we can get some clarity on what the motive was behind this incident. They're treating it as a terror attack. It's John Cohen, our consultant, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security. Police in Barcelona have urged people to avoid Las Ramblas and to remain safe and allow police to do their work, not to spread images. Perhaps they are close to identifying who was in the van and where they may be, after a number of reports said that the van driver and a possible accomplice fled the scene on foot and maybe into a restaurant. In this country, we've heard from the NYPD as one police agency that's monitoring this. They would make adjustments to their deployments as necessary. Not that there's any connection, but they could monitor a little more closely any Spanish sites, the consulate, for example. But our main focus is in Barcelona, where a van has jumped the sidewalk in Catalonia Square in the heart of the tourist district on a summer evening, and crashed into a number of pedestrians. There are a number of people that have been injured. A specific number has not been made clear, but local reports are speaking of deaths. It's not clear. We haven't been able to independently confirm reports of deaths. Nonetheless, this has affected a lot of people in a high traffic area, a high volume area where people were just out on their summer night. A few moments ago, we spoke with Will Gretzky, who works on our assignment desk here at ABC News and happened to be in the area at the time of this van crash.
I am right on Plaza del Gracia, which is one of the main strips. They kind of consider it their Fifth Avenue here in Barcelona. It seems like everybody is being told to go back to their apartments, go back to their hotels. A lot of the restaurants, a lot of the tapas restaurants have closed their doors and asked people not to sit outside. There are quite a few police helicopters circling the air right now, and the main square where I believe this happened has been completely roped off, and the police are asking people to avoid the area.
We're speaking with Will Gretzky, who's an ABC News producer who happens to be in Barcelona, now near the scene of where a van has jumped onto the sidewalk in Catalunya Square and run down pedestrians in the area. Will, the area you're in, I imagine at the time, about 5 o'clock in the evening when this happened on an August night, had to be packed with people.
Yeah, it's completely packed. This is right when a lot of the cruise ships let a lot of people off. So La Rambla, which is where that plaza starts, was completely packed with people. And it's usually no cars can really go down there, so it was completely packed.
Will Gretzky of ABC News, who happens to be in Barcelona near the scene. As soon as we finished speaking with Will a few moments ago, he had been told by police to get inside. As many eyewitnesses reported, they were told to take shelter in a restaurant or cafe or wherever they could nearby, because there are reports that at least one person may be holed up in a restaurant near the scene where the van crashed into pedestrians, and there may be some kind of hostage situation. Police are now confirming that there are deaths as a result of the crash in Barcelona. They have not said how many, but people have died and have been injured after a van crashed into a crowd in Catalonia Square. I'm Erin Katersky. You're listening to live coverage from ABC News. Police in Barcelona are now confirming that people have died, along with those who have been injured in this van, or what appears to be a van attack, although police haven't officially characterized it. A number of reports are saying that police are now treating this as an intentional attack. They have not ascribed any motive, whether this is something that we have seen before out of the ISIS playbook, whether this is a separatist thing. There's a number of complicated political circumstances in Barcelona at the moment, so we continue to wait. We have also been told by Spanish police that there are 2 hostage takers now in this ongoing situation inside a restaurant. Police have started negotiations, and so this adds to the picture now and our understanding of it. So let's bring back Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. We have confirmation now, Brad, of deaths after this van, what appears to be an attack, and 2 people that fled the van said to have taken hostages inside a restaurant.
So this is what you've got. You've got to figure out, first of all, what they have. Do they have on vests? Do they have explosives? What kind of weapons do they have? And you're going to get that a couple of different ways. Are there cameras potentially already inside the restaurant they can tap into? Did people flee to give them information? You're going to have to evacuate basically anybody in the surrounding buildings and above them, if it's like an apartment building, etc. These things never end peacefully, because these guys know what they have done. And so really the key is to minimize anybody else getting harmed other than them. And so that's where your police negotiations are going to head. I'm sure they're talking, getting as much information as possible, seeing what they're, what do they want, et cetera, et cetera. But the goal is going to be to take these 2 guys out. We'll just have to see how long that takes.
Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant, in what Spanish police are treating now as a terror attack. A white van struck pedestrians in Catalonia Square in Las Ramblas, the historic district of Barcelona, that would have been packed on a summer evening with tourists and others at cafes and restaurants. All of those businesses have been ordered shut down. The subway beneath has stopped running, and police have urged everyone else in the city to avoid the area. 2 hostage takers are holed up in a restaurant near the scene of the crash site. We're told negotiations are underway. Let's turn to our foreign desk and ABC's Tom Rivers. Tom?
Exactly, and again, parallels with the attack a few months ago here in London. We had a van vehicular attack, and it looks like now we have a situation in a restaurant, or described as a Turkish bar. A situation very, very tense. As you say, negotiations ongoing right now. We don't know how many people. Unfortunate people may be in that restaurant right now. But again, the police are keeping it very close to the vest, as you can well imagine. They are only confirming some deaths and injuries at this stage, not getting into the numbers. And again, if you look at some of the pictures coming across the board right now, police on every single square inch of this square, Erin.
ABC's Tom Rivers at our foreign desk in London. I'm Aaron Katersky. You're listening to live coverage from ABC News. In what police in Barcelona are now treating like a terror attack, a van has struck pedestrians in the Las Ramblas district, in Las Ramblas, and two hostage takers that appear to have fled the van are said to be holed up inside a restaurant now with negotiations underway. The authorities have declined to ascribe a motive to this or even to identify who these people are that are responsible or that are apparently responsible. Let's bring in John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security and now an ABC News consultant. I guess identifying these guys is going to be a priority.
Yeah, that's right, Aaron, because, as we have seen over the past several years, individuals who are carrying out attacks on behalf of ISIS don't usually engage in long-lasting hostage-taking operations. They tend to start trying to kill people right away. So part of the information and intelligence law enforcement will very quickly try to accumulate would be the identities of these individuals, so they can try to figure out, are these two criminals who inadvertently, as part of some other criminal act, committed this what sounds like to be a mass homicide at this point? Are these, as you pointed out earlier, members of a domestic terrorist organization who may be inclined to negotiate for the release of the hostages, or is it somebody or a group of people who are a part of or inspired by the ideology of a group like ISIS? Once they learn that will help police. Once they learn the identities of these people, that'll help police make a determination whether they should be settling in for a long negotiation or be prepared to do what they call a dynamic entry sooner than later.
John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security and now an ABC News consultant. In Barcelona, the police have confirmed fatalities now as a result of this van crash. Others have been injured. No numbers have been given yet. But this attack, what they're treating as an attack, has now turned deadly in Barcelona. While police work to identify those responsible, the driver of the van and an apparent accomplice fled on foot and are said now to be holed up in a restaurant or bar nearby. And we've been told by Spanish police that there are hostages with them, and so negotiations are underway. ABC's Scott Goldberg, just back himself from Barcelona, following right along with us. Scott?
And Erin, I'm looking at some tweets from the police in Barcelona and Catalunya. Like you say, they have confirmed their deaths without providing a specific number. They're also saying there was not a shootout at Corte Inglés, which is a major department store right off the Plaza Catalunya where this incident began. Apparently on the ground there were reports of a shootout happening there that they had to use their official Twitter feed to deny. So again, a lot of confusion on the ground, but this is now a deadly event according to police, something that started in this very densely packed, busy tourist area and then continued on to Las Ramblas, where if you know anything about Barcelona, it might be that street which goes down the heart of the old city.
ABC's Scott Goldberg just back from that place, Barcelona, where there have now been people killed by what appears to be a deliberate attack, a white van jumping the sidewalk, deaths and injuries now, according to police. This is live coverage from ABC News. I'm Aaron Katersky. The State Department is monitoring after what appears to be a deliberate attack in Barcelona. A white van has jumped a sidewalk in Catalonia Square, densely packed with tourists and others on a summer evening. People have been killed, people have been injured, and this van attack has also now resulted in what appears to be a hostage situation at a nearby restaurant when the driver of the van and perhaps an accomplice jumped out, fled on foot, and then took hostages in this nearby bar or restaurant where police said negotiations are now underway. Let's go to our foreign desk with ABC's Tom Rivers in London. Tom.
The tension there, looking at more pictures coming in, people at the Cordon lines, Erin, right now. Again, the police would probably like them to even move further away, but they're curious, and they're watching what they can. And again, it looks like we're going to have an unfolding potential hostage situation with the police saying two individuals with guns inside this restaurant. And again, this could be many, many hours as far as it unfolds before our very eyes. But it looks like a very, very tense situation. And again, the police are there in great numbers. We'll see how this plays out.
Tom Rivers at our foreign desk in London. Police in Barcelona say a white van jumped the sidewalk, injuring and killing people. Plowing into this summer crowd of tourists and residents, they are treating this as a terror attack. And now we're told by Spanish police 2 hostage takers are holed up inside a nearby restaurant or bar as police continue to sort this out. A large part of Las Ramblas has been shut down, and those who were in the area and couldn't get out have simply been told to shelter where they are. In a church, in the case of one eyewitness we heard from, or a bar or a restaurant. And as we look at images coming in from the area, it is just a long, empty street. You can barely make out the scene where the pedestrians were seen on the ground being tended to by the emergency services, but there are quite a number of them, and very dramatic accounts from eyewitnesses, including our own Will Gretzky, who works on the ABC News assignment desk, happens to be in Barcelona and close to the scene. Will, where are you now, and what do you see?
So, Erin, they shepherded everyone back to their hotel. So I'm back at my hotel now, but there's still a lot of confusion right now as to what exactly happened. But everyone is being asked to clear the streets, go back inside. They've closed a number of storefronts here on kind of the main avenue. I'm actually 3 blocks away from where this happened, and it's considered the city center of Barcelona. So there's a lot of pedestrians, a lot of tourists. So everyone's been asked to kind of clear the street, go inside while the police sort everything out.
And as you look out the window, I mean, does it seem deserted? This would have been a densely packed part of the city.
Yeah, and this is one of the busiest times of the day too, Erin. And yeah, it's a lot less foot traffic than we've seen here in the past few days, especially at this time. Everyone's gone inside. The tapas restaurants that are usually very busy this time of day have been completely deserted, especially in the outside seating where there's usually people having some food, having some drinks at this time. But there's absolutely no one. I think the news of the attack has spread far enough where everyone's kind of cleared the street, heeded the police's warning. There's helicopters overhead. You can hear them. And still a lot of police sirens and ambulance sirens going down the streets to the scene and the surrounding area.
Will Gretzky, who works on the ABC News assignment desk here in New York, happens to be in Barcelona, now finds himself 3 blocks away from the scene of this van crash, what police are treating as a deliberate attack that has killed people and injured others. And while we don't have any numbers, the authorities said that the driver of the van and an apparent accomplice fled the scene and are now holed up with hostages in a nearby restaurant or bar. Authorities cannot confirm a motive, they're saying, but they do believe this to be intentional. Will, stick with us if you can. I want to turn quickly to John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security and now an ABC News consultant, for your impressions, John, as this continues to unfold.
Well, I think on the one hand, it's positive that that it is a hostage event, as strange as that sounds. What police don't want to have to be dealing with are 2 terrorists going into a crowded restaurant and starting to execute people in the restaurant. So the longer that the situation, unfolds and hostages are not killed bluntly, and the police have the opportunity to engage in negotiations with the 2 hostage takers and hopefully resolve this peacefully. So the next 30, 45 minutes, hour will be really important and help us determine, which way this is going to go.
John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security and now an ABC News consultant. John, it does bear the hallmarks of what we have seen previously in Europe and in this country, frankly, with an ISIS-inspired type attack, although the political circumstances in Spain make that more uncertain, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, there's a long history of of terrorist attacks being committed by domestic separatist groups called the Basque Separatists. There's recently been some anti-tourist, what they're calling vigilantes, who have been engaged in not so much violent activities, but activities meant to intimidate or cause fear amongst tourists. But, the bottom line is that over the last year and a half, we've seen a number of terrorist attacks throughout Western Europe. ISIS has specifically called for its members or people inspired by its cause to carry out attacks targeting crowded tourist areas. They specifically have advised people to use any weapon that they can, be it a gun or a knife or a car, but work to try to kill as many people as possible. So again, local authorities, until they have this situation under control, are going to treat it like a terrorist attack, because at this point, everything we've seen, the individuals who are involved have behaved exactly like terrorists.
ABC's consultant on law enforcement matters, John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security. And indeed, they are treating this as a terror attack, although police in Catalonia say they cannot confirm a motive for the attack at the moment. But certainly we can see the way they are behaving, and as word comes in that there are hostages being held by a couple of people who may be responsible for this inside a nearby restaurant or bar. A woman named Susan McLean was in the area immediately following the crash of the van. She spoke to my colleague, ABC's Tom Yamas, just a moment ago.
So, Susan, tell me where you were and what you saw.
Okay, so we were about 100 meters down from the square where all this unfolded, and we saw this tidal wave of people running and screaming towards us. It was just like these floodgates have opened. They were screaming in Spanish. We had no idea what was going on. They were very, very distressed, and a lot of them were yelling out, shooting, shooting. So we quickly ran into a shop. I momentarily lost my husband, which was quite scary because we got separated. And then we were all locked in a shop. I must say that, and I guess that, and I understand as a former police officer that the police had to deal with what was going on, but there was so poor communication, because even after about 40 minutes, when we managed to get ourselves out of the shop around the corner to our hotel, there were still hordes of people walking up towards the actual scene. So there was no police actually cordoning off streets and telling people to stay away at that point. So it was a very concerning situation.
Could you hear the impact of the car hitting those people?
We couldn't hear the impact. It was just the aftermath, and we saw the police arrive, we saw the ambulances, we could see all of that. But as much as people go up and film this sort of stuff, I'm not about to do that. I want to keep myself safe. So we came back when it was safe. Well, actually, it probably wasn't safe because there were two gunmen on the loose at that point. And that's my argument is we were actually allowed out of the shop to go back to our hotel whilst there were still two gunmen on the loose. We had no idea of that. There was no information being shared, not even on Twitter at that point, because that's the first place I turned to try and get information about what was going on.
And did you ever see the armed men? Did you ever see them go into the restaurant, or the restaurant that people were taken hostage in?
No, that was a considerable amount of time after the initial impact of the van. And so once we got around the corner and back into our hotel, then the hotel people said the police have advised everyone has to be in lockdown. So we are now in the hotel. There's just been another wave of sirens going through. We could hear that in the distance, but we're safe here now, and that's the important thing.
Okay, and just once again, what was it like the moment you saw everyone run to you?
It was fear. As I said, I was 27 years in law enforcement in Melbourne, so your gut and your adrenaline kicks in, and I knew instinctively that this was a terrorist attack. There was no other reason that so many people so distressed could be heading our way. So it was basically about get into the shop, keep ourselves safe until we could get back to our hotel.
Susan McLean of Melbourne, Australia, a tourist in Barcelona, speaking with my colleague ABC's Tom Yamas just a moment ago after a van apparently deliberately crashed into a crowd of people in Catalonia Square, a densely packed area on a summer evening. Spanish police say there are deaths and there are injuries. They have not put numbers to those statistics. They have also said they're treating this as if it's a terrorist attack, although they have yet to ascribe a motive to the perpetrators. Those perpetrators appear to have fled on foot and into a nearby restaurant or bar where Spanish police told us they were taking hostages. All of this continues to unfold within a few blocks of where Will Gretzky is. Will works on our assignment desk here at ABC News, happens to be in Barcelona in the middle of this now. Will, what do you see?
Well, Erin, on a normally very busy time of the evening, a lot of tourists and a lot of people who live here have cleared the streets. Everyone waiting in the lobby of hotels, the front areas of restaurants, looking on, trying to figure out what happened. But everyone's definitely very alarmed and very scared because there's still reports of these guys on the loose, and that's what a lot of people in my general area have been talking about. They're still not sure exactly what happened or what the situation is, but the streets are very clear. A lot of the restaurants have closed their doors or closed the front areas of their restaurants so nobody can come in, and everyone's waiting for word from police on when this incident is over.
All right, Will, stay safe, and please let us know if you hear any additional information. Will Gretzky of ABC News in Barcelona, and he is one of those told to just get out of the area and was bussed back to his hotel just a few blocks from the scene in Catalonia Square in Las Ramblas in Barcelona, where this apparent attack took place a short while ago, about 5 o'clock in the evening. ABC News consultant Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, is with us. Brad, this possibility of a hostage situation and people holed up, this isn't going to end well.
It's not going to end well, and the key is going to be for the negotiators to keep these guys talking, even if they know it's not going to go anywhere, because the longer in the short run they can spread this out, the more intel they can gather and figure out ways to possibly do a dynamic entry or get them into a vulnerable situation or position where they could shoot them, because that's really kind of end up being your options. The other wider optic on this is one would hope that they've figured out potentially who they are, because you want to know if they have legs or links to somebody else that's in some other location that also wants to do something. So you got a lot of moving parts here, but you've got those two primary parts going on. Who are these guys? Are they connected? And are there other potential attacks out there sort of in the waiting?
ABC's law enforcement consultant Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, and we have seen this movie before, Brad, in other cities. It's a complicated political picture, I guess, in Spain, but the procedure's the same as far as law enforcement's concerned. We're just seeing some images of police, guns drawn, going into these restaurants nearby looking for perpetrators.
Correct. But the real key is going to be, in my view, do they have a unit that's actually trained to handle these situations? Because what you want to do, obviously, is not have anybody else harmed other than the bad guys. And we have seen in a number of different jurisdictions across the world where they end up storming a place, other people die. And, that may end up, we obviously hope that doesn't happen, but you could end up with that in this situation. So we'll see how well, the Barcelona authorities, I'm going to guess counterterrorism units and maybe even the military, if they have specialty units, are involved in trying to figure out what they have and how they can make this go away without other people dying other than the bad guys.
Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant on law enforcement matters, such as the one in Barcelona that we are now following. Deaths, injuries, now a hostage situation in a nearby restaurant to where a van crashed into a crowd of pedestrians out in a summer evening. ABC's Scott Goldberg, who's just back from Barcelona, following the developments with us. Scott?
And Erin, I'm saying that there's word from the government of Catalunya, the province where this happened, where Barcelona is, that there's going to be a spokesperson from the police updating this at, they say, 7 o'clock local time. So that would be about 15 minutes from now. We might start to get some more clarity. We're going based on official tweets and eyewitness accounts. And the police have said so far that, yes, there are deaths as a result of this van attack. They're investigating it as a terror attack. And they said, although they don't know the motive, they had a terror attack response plan that they put into place as soon as this started. So add that information to the reports of someone with a gun in a nearby restaurant, a hostage situation, and know that because this was such a busy area in the heart of the city, a major tourist destination, you had a massive police presence to begin with, and they would have just started doing their jobs immediately as soon as this happened.
Yeah, indeed, police were on the scene very quickly and closed off a broad swath of Las Ramblas, such to the point where our cameras that we're watching cannot even see fully down toward where this van crash happened in Catalonia Square. Pedestrians were quickly cleared out of the area as police stretched crime tape across the sidewalk. Other pedestrians were told to either get out or in some cases told to shelter in place. Catalonia police are still not calling this terrorism. They have not confirmed a motive, but they have activated their response plan for a terror attack. So they're certainly treating this like an attack, and they are now dealing with a potential hostage situation in a nearby restaurant or bar. This all happened at about 5 o'clock in the evening local time when crowds of tourists and residents would be out on a summer evening in Las Ramblas, the heart of Barcelona, and police are confirming deaths as well as injuries. They have not put any numbers to this, but as Scott says, the Interior Ministry of Spain, a short time from now, is expected to brief reporters, and perhaps we'll get a little more clarity. In the meantime, I want to turn back to John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security, for his thoughts as we watch this unfold. John?
Yeah, Erin, I think again, as we've been discussing, and to build on what Brad Garrett was saying, police will want to gain control of the situation and hopefully be dealing with a situation that will involve a negotiation, because the goal here is to prevent any additional injuries or deaths, except, as you pointed out, of the bad guys. But again, typically, in ISIS or Al-Qaeda-inspired attacks of late, your secondary attack would be, efforts by the people in this case driving the van to begin killing people right away. So the fact that we haven't seen that, have not seen that yet, is somewhat encouraging. But again, police will want to gain control of the situation. They want to make sure they have as much information and intelligence as they can acquire about the suspects. They will seek to engage in negotiation, and they'll make a judgment call whether they'll try to go the negotiation route and stretch this thing out and try to get the hostages released, or whether they're going to need to go in and make entry and take out the suspects.
John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security, now an ABC News consultant. Spanish radio is reporting as many as 13 deaths, but that number has not been independently confirmed by ABC News as we await Spanish police and a briefing that they said would come within the next several minutes to give us some additional clarity. They've only said there are deaths and there are injuries after this van plowed into a crowd in Barcelona at about 5 o'clock on a summer evening in a crowded spot in the heart of the city. Our foreign desk is staffed by Tom Rivers in London. Tom, what are you hearing?
Yeah, hearing that development as well. Very, very chilling from local radio in Barcelona on the what they say is the death toll. Anecdotally, people that saw this van said that literally dozens of people had been in its path. So that's a very high number. But as you say, we're waiting for the police to come forward and give us a briefing. Of course, all of the focus right now is on this restaurant. What is happening inside there? How are the police engaging with these individuals inside? That's going to be the focus right now.
Tom Rivers, at our foreign desk in London, we are just being told from our White House troops that the Chief of Staff, General John Kelly, has been made aware of what's going on in Barcelona and is keeping the president abreast as we continue to follow these developments. The driver of the van appears to have fled on foot, possibly with an accomplice, and there is what Spanish police have called a hostage situation underway in a nearby restaurant or bar. Negotiations are said to be underway. Eyewitnesses who saw the van ramming into people said they saw a number of those on the ground, a lot of ambulances, police with assault rifles. We saw, in fact, some images of police with long guns drawn, hunting for suspects after the driver of the van and this possible accomplice fled into a restaurant. Vehicles have been used to ram into crowds in a series of attacks across Europe, even in this country, since July of last year. And so Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI and now an ABC News consultant, this does fit a pattern, even as we wait for Spanish police to officially call this one thing or another.
Of course, and it certainly, Erin, fits the pattern of something simplistic.
This is an ABC News special report.
Good afternoon, I'm Tom Yamas. We continue to follow breaking news out of Europe, what is looking more and more like a terror attack in the heart of Barcelona. Police there tell us a van apparently rammed into several people that were walking along one of its busiest areas, Las Ramblas. Essentially, this is the Fifth Avenue of Barcelona in the heart of the city there. We're being very careful with some of the images we're showing you because there are multiple victims that are laid out all across the floor. At this point right now, we understand that multiple people have died and there are several other victims. Now, one eyewitness telling Spanish media that this looked like the van came in speeding off a side street and just plowed into several people for 50 yards, basically plowing over them like corn. People went airborne. Our Terry Moran, our chief foreign correspondent, has been monitoring all these developments. And Terry, this is still an active situation because we understand the driver and possibly at least one other person are now holed up in a restaurant.
That's right, Tom. This is an ongoing fluid attack. A terror attack is what Spanish police are now calling this situation, in two phases. First, the van attack in this very packed, very popular with tourists area of downtown Barcelona. And now, what is apparently a hostage situation. Police sources confirming to ABC News that two gunmen have holed up in a restaurant nearby, apparently a Turkish restaurant near the site of that van attack. Police are negotiating with them. They are telling people who are in that district to shelter in place, and they are telling people who are not to stay away. They are also urging people not to share images of the carnage there, because what is out there right now shows that this has been a very serious attack. They also don't want to reveal to potential attackers their own movements. That place is now swarming with police up and down those streets as they secure the area, and they believe they have cornered two gunmen now holed up in a restaurant near the site of the van attack.
You have a major section of one of the biggest cities in Europe under lockdown right now in a hostage situation. ABC News' Will Gretzky arrived to the scene moments after this van attack. He joins us now live. Will, what did you see?
Tom, in what is normally a very busy part of Barcelona, everybody was moving very quickly away from the scene. The Plaza, right near where this attack took place, is usually a very busy part of the city. Some consider it the center of the city. Everybody was walking very fast, some people running up the street. The tapas restaurants along Passeig del Gracia that are normally open at this time were closing their doors, asking people who were seated outside to go inside, and hotel bellmen were doing the same, asking people to go inside and clear the street.
Our Will Gretzky, who was reporting from Barcelona right now. If you're just joining us live, we are following a terror attack that has just occurred in Barcelona. If these pictures look familiar, they are brand new, but this attack does feel very familiar because car attacks, van attacks have been happening all across Europe, even here in the United States. Our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross, joins me now. Brian, when you look at these pictures, when you look at the damage on that van and now the situation, the hostage situation where the driver and possibly one other man are armed and holed up in a restaurant, This looks and sounds very familiar.
That's right, Tom. There have been no claims of any responsibility, and we don't know yet who might be responsible. But it has all the trademarks of the attacks we've seen, inspired by ISIS. ISIS has sent out word to its followers, attack this way, use vehicles, use anything you can. The most recently, 13 months ago, when 86 people were killed in Nice, France on Bastille Day, when a truck ran down a major highway there. Since then, the Berlin Christmas market attack, and then 2 separate attacks on London Bridge and Westminster Bridge in London. The toll has been huge in these attacks, at least 9 or 10 major attacks said to be inspired by ISIS. They continue to send out the word, if you can kill any way you can, use a vehicle.
Yeah, we talk about the timing. Right now, it's 6:56 p.m. in Barcelona. When the attack happened, it was 5 o'clock. It's an area full of tourists, full of people. And from what we've heard from eyewitnesses, this van veered off a side street and just plowed into that pedestrian plaza.
Exactly. And we can see from the pictures we've seen so far that there was no indication of any barriers that would prevent that. That's something that's now taken place in New York City at Times Square. After a number of these attacks, they've begun to put up concrete barriers, so it's not easy to come off veer off a side street and run down a pedestrian area like the Ramblas.
We do know the president, who has been dealing with very delicate situations here at home, is now dealing with this international terrorism attack. We want to go now to Cecilia Vega, who is traveling with the president right now. Cecilia?
Yeah, Tom, we were told just a few minutes ago that President Trump has been briefed. We're told by the White House that the Chief of Staff, General John Kelly, is aware of the situation and is keeping the president up to speed on everything that is happening there in Spain. There's no word directly from the president himself just yet, but the First Lady, in fact, is the first one to offer public comments on what's happening there in Barcelona. She just tweeted a couple of minutes ago saying, quote, thoughts and prayers to Barcelona. We do know, Tom, also that there's been a warning from the State Department this afternoon. 2 American travelers in Spain there right now. Heather Newart, the State Department spokeswoman, tweeting out that the State Department is closely monitoring events in Barcelona and that sending a word out to any Americans who are there to stay away.
Cecilia Vega for us. Anytime these terror attacks happen abroad, and they have happened here, in fact, we just had a car attack over the weekend, law enforcement all across the country set new precautions. I want to go to Pierre Thomas right now to tell us what some of the authorities are doing here at home.
Tom, FBI, DHS, and New York City officials are monitoring this very, very closely. Typically, the NYPD will step up patrols, have heavily armed units out in public display to deter any kind of potential act of terrorism. Right now, law enforcement here has been particularly concerned about these low-tech type attacks. Every month or so, they've been sending out notices to local law enforcement to be on guard and prepared for these kind of attacks, Tom. It's a great and growing concern here in the United States.
And almost impossible to defend. All right, Pierre, thanks so much. If you're just joining our coverage, we want to update you. We are following news of a terror attack in the heart of Barcelona, an apparent van attack. Police there say 1 person, possibly 2, drove a van at full speed into a pedestrian plaza, hitting several people. We know that multiple people have died and several others are injured. And as we've been following these stories for the last 2 years out of Europe, even here at home, these van attacks have been a preferred method of attack for terrorists across the globe. We're going to stay on top of this story throughout the afternoon. We're going to have a full update with our entire team on World News Tonight with David Muir. We now return to our scheduled programming.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Way down to the water. So 2.5 miles to the south. I have a friend stuck in the office. Will Gretzky, our ABC News desk assistant, was talking to us from the Passeig de Gracia, which is on the other end of this, the north side of the city. It is a major avenue. He very correctly described where he is as the 5th Avenue of Barcelona. So they are shutting down the major thoroughfares, and that gives you somewhat of an idea of just how big the perimeter is as this investigation continues.
ABC's Scott Goldberg with us following these developments. And I want to turn back to Brad Garrett, if I could, the ABC News consultant, formerly of the FBI, because, Brad, there may well be an economic component to all of this, as Scott says, shutting down the main shopping thoroughfare.
Yes, and that is one of their goals, is to try to adversely affect the economy in locations in particular where Westerners or international folks travel. because their belief is the more they can hurt an area economically, it's better for them as far as recruitment and or people joining their cause. I'm not sure that actually translates, but that's certainly their belief.
And Brad, I wanted to ask you too. There's an active hostage negotiation underway here. You have in another part of that district tending to victims. The police have to plan for this kind of thing. They say they've activated a terror plan. What's that mean?
That means that they have certain protocols, like who's going to block the traffic, who's actually going to handle the movement of locations. In other words, moving through, as we've seen on television, from one building to the next. In other words, coordinating is what we're looking for. Who is going to be the overall on-scene commander? I'm going to presume and hopefully presume that the on-scene commander and whatever troops he brings know how to handle these kind of situations. So what you do, how you set up, where you put snipers, how do you get cameras into locations, what you say. You got to really have attuned negotiators that can speak, obviously, the language of the bad guys, and you draw them out. What do you want? What do you need? Where are we going? And you try to get out of them intel as to what's going on inside the building, in other words, or inside the restaurant. How many people are in there? Is anybody hurt? And basically let them do as much talking as possible because, as I mentioned earlier, you're just trying to buy time. You're trying to buy enough time to figure out what do we have on our hands.
ABC News consultant Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, in Barcelona, what police have now called a terror attack has killed people and injured others, no specific numbers, after a white van plowed into a crowd in Catalonia Square, right in Las Ramblas, the heavily trafficked tourist district. A number of people were out on a summer evening who would never have expected this. I want to turn to John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security. How should people be behaving in this day and age if they're in a crowded spot like this, knowing what's gone on in the world over the past year or so?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the new normal. We've seen over the last year or two, we've seen an increase in attacks against so-called soft targets. These are places where people congregate that are difficult to secure because if you harden them or put in place a lot of security around these events, you make it so that they can't carry out the functions that they were created to carry out. So, restaurants, bars, shopping areas, these are all high priority targets for terrorist organizations because they are less secured. So that means the public has to be more aware. As we've talked about before, the public shouldn't be afraid. They should go about and live their lives. But in this day and age, you have to be aware of your surroundings. You have to, if you see something suspicious, you need to report it to law enforcement. If you find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event or some other type of mass casualty event, you should have already thought through, what you would do if you were confronted with this type of situation, know where the exits are, and know where there are places to hide. This, unfortunately, is just the way we have to live our lives today.
John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security, and now an ABC News consultant after another vehicle ramming attack, this time in Spain, in Barcelona. It follows similar attacks in Jerusalem, in London, in Stockholm, in Paris, in Charlottesville, Virginia. John, can police stop these?
It's very difficult. Unless we can get intelligence or information about an attacker prior to them conducting the attack, as was discussed earlier, it's very difficult to secure every location in the city. And those locations that are secure are going to be overlooked by terrorist organizations, and they're going to go after places that are less secure. Remember, the terrorists want to cause as many casualties as possible, and they want to go to places where there's less security as possible, and they want to create the most attention to their attack as possible. So they're going to go to places like shopping malls. They're going to go to places like outdoor or entertainment areas. They're going to try to go to restaurants, places where people congregate. So police really have to work, more closely with the community to acquire intelligence about people who may be potential attackers. They need to rethink the way they collect intelligence against terrorist organizations. But the sad fact of the matter is that if you have an individual who is inspired by terrorist ideology, who operates independent of a terrorist group and just decides to do some type of attack using a car, it's going to be very difficult for police to stop that.
You're listening to live coverage from ABC News. I'm Erin Katursky. In what Spanish police have called a terror attack, a white van has plowed into a group of pedestrians in the heart of Barcelona. There are several dead and several injured. We are waiting for Spanish police to give us a briefing, which they said would come sometime around now. There is, simultaneously to this, a hostage situation in a nearby restaurant. I want to turn to ABC's chief foreign correspondent, Terry Moran. Terry, in yet another European city, another vehicle ramming attack.
And another horrific result, Erin. This is going to be an ongoing situation because Spanish police sources tell us, as you've been reporting, that there are gunmen holed up in a nearby restaurant. They are negotiating with them. But what has already come out is that this van, at speed, rammed pedestrians in the heart of Barcelona, one of the most popular tourist destinations in Europe and one of the most popular tourist destinations in that city. There are multiple killed, many injured, and this is a dastardly and just almost undefensible attack, as we have seen in city after city after city. The most common thing you see on the streets of any city is a truck, a van, a car, and again being turned into a weapon. Barcelona this time.
We're speaking with our chief foreign correspondent, ABC's Terry Moran, who's in London for us and who has been on the scene in countless cities across Europe for similar attacks like this. Although in Spain, Terry, the politics of the place don't make this obviously, say, ISIS just yet.
Well, not yet. Spain has been inwardly directed in recent years, recovering from the collapse of its economy. It's now growing quite well. But remember, Spain was the site of one of the worst post-9/11 terror attacks on trains in Madrid. 192 people killed when al-Qaeda terrorists blew up a couple of commuter trains. And so it has had experience with terror attacks, and recently counter-terror officials in Spain have been warning the populace that they too are in the crosshairs of ISIS, even though they've had nothing to do in Syria or Iraq. It's just a fact that Europe has been targeted by ISIS and other extremist groups in order to trigger what one naturally feels: anger, revulsion, and increasingly in places and pockets in Europe and pockets in the United States, bigotry and almost violent feelings against Muslims in Europe and in the United States. They want to start a war with these kind of attacks, and the game that they're playing, the dastardly game that they're playing, is to use these almost unstoppable kinds of everyday attacks to wreak havoc and cause death in the cities, the major cities of Europe.
ABC's Terry Moran, our chief foreign correspondent from his post at our foreign desk in London. Terry, thanks. The authorities in Spain have now confirmed 1 death, 32 injuries. 10 of those injuries are said to be quite serious. The Spanish authorities, again, confirming 1 death, 32 injuries, 10 of those quite serious, after a deliberate attack in a vehicle ramming through a crowd along Las Ramblas in Barcelona. This all unfolded at about 5 o'clock on a summer evening. The area packed with tourists and residents. We're waiting to hear more from the authorities in Spain, but they have said this was a terror attack. They said they're treating it as such, and they have also said that there are 2 men who have taken hostages inside a Turkish restaurant nearby the crash site as we wait to find out more. But negotiations are said to be underway. 1 death, although the expectation is that toll could rise. 32 injured. ABC's Scott Goldberg here following these developments with us, Scott.
And the police, Erin, are calling these provisional facts. So, yes, like you say, just to underline, one person dead at this point, 32 hurt. Those numbers will change. And to underscore what Terry Moran was talking about a few minutes ago, the busiest part of one of the busiest tourist destinations in Europe, I was right there 2 weeks ago. I mean, when you go to Barcelona, this is the area where you go. Even if you're a veteran visitor of Barcelona and you would stay away from the equivalent of its Times Square, and you wouldn't go to the Ramblas necessarily. I met a friend for lunch at a restaurant right off Las Ramblas. Plaza Catalunya, I mentioned the department store in front of which a lot of this activity has happened. I went there to get contact solution while I was in Barcelona. This is the place where you get on the subway to go to points outside of the center of the city. It's a transit hub. It's virtually inescapable that a visitor to this city would be at Plaza Catalunya. So, again, if you were someone looking to cause harm and to have a high casualty count, unfortunately, this is a place where you would go.
And we have both of those, harm and a high casualty count. 1 dead at least, and as many as 32 hurt, 10 of them seriously, after a van jumped onto the sidewalk and struck pedestrians in this heart of Barcelona in what authorities are now calling a terror attack. We have also been hearing from eyewitnesses that they saw there's people spread all over the ground. One eyewitness described it like a van plowing through a cornfield. So many people just being mowed down in this deliberate attack at about 5 o'clock on a summer evening in Barcelona, where the authorities have confirmed at least 1 death and an expectation that this death toll is going to rise. 32 people hurt, again, provisionally, and we're waiting for Spanish authorities to tell us a little bit more. In the meantime, I want to turn to Steve Gomez, an ABC News consultant formerly of the FBI. Steve, with the unfolding drama, and we're hearing police now saying that the hospitals need donations of blood. They have that scene. They also have this scene in a nearby Turkish restaurant with hostages. How do they begin to resolve this?
This is going to be a long, drawn-out situation, and we talked about how the crime scene or the perimeter is just it's so expansive, and that's required with this situation because there are so many things going on right now. Of course, the most important thing is human life. They do need blood. They do need whatever is required to provide care to the victims of this attack. So that's priority number one. And right there with priority number one is the hostage situation that they're dealing with at the restaurant, because there's the potential for additional loss of life, casualties, and so on. So they have to deal with that. I've said this many times as we've covered these types of attacks. This is an all-hands-on-deck situation. So everybody in the Spanish police, the government, they are descending onto this situation. And when you have these types of situations, it's such an organizational exercise because you're dealing with so many issues going on. And when they talked about how they have implemented their plan, their counterterrorism plan, a lot of what that means is they're now in crisis management mode, where in the FBI, we would immediately go into an emergency operations center. Here in Los Angeles, where I was based, we would stand up our operations center. LAPD would stand up theirs. FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. would stand up theirs. Pretty much everybody that was affected would have their operations centers. Everybody's filling in their analysts, investigators, everybody, and they're now handling this, what I describe as an organizational exercise, because there's so many priorities. You have to have multiple teams that are dealing with each one because you can't wait.
Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. The agencies that he mentions, police agencies, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security in this country, are for now taking no specific actions other than monitoring the events in Barcelona, where at least 1 has been killed and 32 injured in a vehicle ramming attack. An eyewitness to all of this named Will is now locked down in a restaurant near the scene. He's on the line with us live now. Will, first of all, where are you and what do you see?
I'm in a restaurant called Untitled Chapter. It's about 500 meters near the top of the road. And I'm just stuck inside, so I can't really see much. All I can see is a few vans and ambulances outside. Most of the patients are out by the window. kind of just wait to see what's going on.
It sounds like you were quite near the scene then when the van came into the crowd.
Well, I didn't actually notice the van because we literally just finished eating our food, and then I saw all of a sudden a commotion, people rushing up to the windows, and then there were people running past, and I saw about 20 meters down the road there's a couple of people crouched around someone, assuming being hit, but I didn't actually see a van or anything like that. I just really saw the aftermath.
So you heard, obviously, the chaos afterwards. I imagine that was quite unnerving.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was. I had no idea what was going on because I don't speak Spanish. I don't know what people were shouting about. It was a bit of a delay for a couple of minutes while we figured out what happened, and then I think, as we saw police running past, we saw something had gone wrong.
Will, you're obviously a visitor to the city, but other cities in Europe have seen similar type attacks. I mean, it doesn't seem like any place there is immune.
No, I mean, even where I come from London, there was an attack in Trinity Park a month ago, and that's just down the road from me. So I guess anywhere you go, any Western city, this could happen, especially in a tourist area. So it's not a complete surprise. Obviously, you can't really plan for it.
As you're locked down in this restaurant, we can hear some commotion behind you. Are there a number of people there with you?
There's still about 40 people in this restaurant. We've all been here about 3 hours. So I think, people are just anxious waiting to see what's going on. If you looked across the road, I think we saw some people being escorted into the museum opposite, some people being walked down the street. The police have come to speak to the manager a couple of times, but we don't know what they talked about. So we're just kind of waiting.
With no real word as to how long you're going to have to stay there.
No idea. No idea what's going on. No idea how long we're going to stay here. I can't actually see any police at the moment. So I assume they're moving down the street, but I can't see from here.
Well, we hope you're able to get out of there soon and this comes to some resolution. Please stay safe, and our thanks for speaking with us. Will is one of the many tourists in Barcelona at this time of year. Was just finishing up a plate of food when a van right nearby barreled into a crowd of pedestrians, deliberately, Spanish police say, killing at least one person and injuring nearly 36 others. And he is now, with 40 other people, locked inside that restaurant, as Spanish police have told a number of people to just stay put. Anybody not in the area has been told to stay away, and that's because police have an ongoing hostage situation at a restaurant nearby where the perpetrators of the attack, it's believed, fled on foot into the restaurant, took hostages, and now negotiations are underway with at least one person killed and several injured. ABC's Scott Goldberg here now to bring us up to speed with what the Spanish authorities are saying.
Well, they are saying there is at least one person dead, 32 injured, 10 of those injuries serious, but they're calling these provisional details, so it's very clear that they expect those numbers will change. We, apart from that, are hearing what our eyewitnesses are reporting, and we're seeing video on social media of some of those injured who were strewn about with noticeably broken bones and other injuries on Las Ramblas, this strip in Barcelona that goes through the heart of the old city and is so popular and would have been so densely packed.
The initial fear was that there was going to be some shootout in the street. The authorities quickly tamped down that rumor, but they are focused on a Turkish restaurant, I guess,
right
nearby where this hostage situation is unfolding. You seen any images of what that may look like?
No, and being fairly familiar with Barcelona, this is not a restaurant I've heard of, so I don't know how popular this place would have been or if it's something they would have targeted for some reason, choosing to go into that restaurant. It does seem, though, that police they said they activated their terror protocol once they determined this was a terrorist attack, and they were investigating it as such even before they were sure of what the motive was or what might have happened had this just been an accident or anything. So what we do know is the police are responding very deliberately and carefully to this, and we do see from the images, regardless of where it is in the city, and so much of the city is locked down right now, all the major avenues. As I mentioned, I have a friend in an office about 2.5 miles away who can't leave, 2.5 miles from the scene, that the police were right there when it happened. they've been responding in force to this from the moment it happened, and all of these pictures show that there continues to be that heavy police presence throughout the heart of the city.
ABC's Scott Goldberg with us after a terror attack in Barcelona. At about 5 o'clock on a summer evening, more than 2 hours ago, a white van jumped onto the sidewalk and careened into a crowd of people. There were many people lying on the pavement, as we saw in social media images, tended to by police, who, as Scott says, were on scene very, very quickly. The authorities, while calling this a terror attack, have not said who was responsible, but they have chased 2 people into a restaurant. And there are active hostage negotiations, we're told, on the way. We are taking a look at some video that was just sent to us from the aftermath of this attack. Blood on the sidewalk, a number of people on the ground being tended to by the emergency services or by passersby. But it really fits with the description that I saw one eyewitness say, that it was like a cornfield, and the van just driving through, mowing people down at random, but certainly deliberately. And police have confirmed at least one person is dead, with as many as 32 others injured. 10 of those injuries are said to be quite serious. And this active hostage scene now unfolding right nearby in a restaurant as the authorities continue to bring this to some kind of resolution. ABC News consultant Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, how long can this go on?
Well, it could go on for several hours, and the reason why is that if the police know or believe that no one's getting harmed, then they're going to continue to let it go on. And I'll tell you why, is because the longer it goes, the longer they will know what the bad guys are up to. Depending on what type of equipment they have, Erin, can they see inside this restaurant at this point? Who knows? But the longer you can gather intel, the greater likelihood that you can have maybe no one else in the civilian population injured or die, and you can just focus on the bad guys. It also allows them to assess who else is connected to them. I mean, I've noticed on the web while we were on, there's unconfirmed reports of maybe there's a third person. Well, who knows if that's true, but if it is, where is the person? Were they out with them today during this attack, or are they someplace else sort of in waiting to launch another attack? Because you've got to keep all of these parts moving at the same time, despite the fact we're all focused on this barricade in a restaurant. There could be other parts that are moving as we go along. But to go back to your original question, I think they'll let this go on as long as they can if no one's getting hurt, till they believe they've reached an impasse. And what happens is the tenor and tone of negotiation changes. You can tell where the bad guys are just sort of fed up, or they're not going to talk anymore, or they're starting to make moves to harm people. Any of the above changes the equation, and we've seen that. We've seen that in Europe a number of times, where the police just had to, within 2 minutes, barge into a location because they just didn't have any choice. We'll have to see if we end up in that situation here in Barcelona.
Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. From our foreign desk in London, our chief foreign correspondent, Terry Moran. Terry, just looking down the list of attacks just in the last, year and a half or so, Jerusalem, of course, London, Stockholm, Paris, Charlottesville, Virginia, Nice, Ohio State, Berlin. This follows a deadly pattern.
It does. This has become the signature attack of terrorists in Europe, and terrorists, not just Muslim terrorists who are sent by ISIS or other extremist groups, but one of the attacks, vehicle attacks here in London up at the Finsbury Mosque, was an attack by an English-born person against Muslims at that mosque. As we saw also in Charlottesville, a vehicle attack by someone apparently associated with the white supremacist protest there. So this is a weapon of choice now, this vehicle-style attack, which is so difficult to prevent and so terrifying and so effective, because at speed, of course, with that kind of mass into a crowd, as your eyewitnesses and others have said, bodies are flying. What you're seeing in Barcelona is the carnage, the savagery that can be accomplished with the most ordinary kind of object in our lives. This is the kind of murderous imagination that the age of terror has sponsored.
Terry, I mean, it's hard to imagine that this is the world in which we have to live. But as we've heard, police have a very difficult time stopping an attack like this without some kind of an advance warning. And in a location such as Las Ramblas, it's going to be packed with people on a summer evening.
That's right, and those are the targets that terrorists like. You get a lot of people in the most innocent and normal of circumstances, a beautiful summer evening in a beautiful European city filled with people from all over the world enjoying themselves, and you'll get headlines for that. They stage these atrocities, frankly, in the theater of the media. They know that if they attacked a town in the hinterland with the exact same kind of attack, they wouldn't get the kind of attention that they do in downtown Barcelona. I should say one thing. These are signature attacks of these extremist groups. Many more have been thwarted. And in covering these attacks, the thing that always strikes me is hearing very shortly after, in many of them, frankly all of them, that the attacker or attackers were known to authorities as having links to extremists. They were on the radar of the security services. Now, how did that happen? Often through electronic means. They were in the wrong chat room, or they had some kind of conversation with someone in Syria. But more often than that, patriotic Muslims in Spain, in Britain, in Germany, in France have informed authorities. When I've gone to the neighborhoods where these attackers have lived in previous attacks, what I've heard again and again from neighbors is we are calling the government all the time about these people. And I think, frankly, the security services are overwhelmed. But it's an important point to make that the front line of defense to these attacks are the Muslim communities in these countries themselves.
ABC's chief foreign correspondent, Terry Moran, with us from his post at our foreign desk in London. Terry, as always, thank you. We just got word from Secretary of State Rex Tillerson offering condolences for the loss of life and injuries of so many innocent people yet again in Barcelona. So the first official government reaction from the United States. But let's bring in Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI and now an ABC News consultant. To Terry's point, Steve, the authorities, he's quite right, often do know the perpetrators of these attacks, and they're on, as he says, on the radar.
They are on the radar, and Terry hit on an excellent point that is the situation that seems to occur every time in the aftermath. You learn about the subject and you learn about what law enforcement's activity was. However, as he said, they are so overwhelmed with tips and leads and investigations, trying to figure out who do they need to do surveillance on 24/7? Who do they not need to do that on? Who is a more immediate threat to the community and who is just talking and espousing rhetoric? That makes counterterrorism the most difficult type of investigation that you can conduct. It was the most difficult I ever conducted in the FBI, and it's very well known. It's not as easy as working a drug case, a violent crime case, a white-collar case. You don't know what is going on in the person's head until they actually go out and flip the switch and go operational and kill people.
Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. As we follow developments in Barcelona, in the heart of the city, a van jumped onto the sidewalk in Catalonia Square, ended up running down a group of pedestrians, killing at least one and injuring some 32. The authorities in Spain, though, say those numbers are likely to rise, and we have seen some very graphic aftermath images that show blood on the pavement and broken bodies lying and being tended to by the emergency services or just good Samaritans who happen to be in the area. And there were a lot of them on a summer evening in the heart of Barcelona, which has now been hit by what authorities call a terror attack. I'm Erin Katursky. You're listening to live coverage from ABC News. Spanish police say they are investigating a terror attack after a white van jumped a sidewalk and onto a group of pedestrians, just mowing them down before coming to rest. Inside the van, the driver and an apparent accomplice got out, fled on foot, and into a nearby restaurant where Spanish police said they've taken hostages. Negotiations are underway to try to bring this to some kind of conclusion, but not before at least one person has been killed and 32 others injured. Tolls that are likely to rise, the Spanish authorities said. Eyewitnesses spoke of just seeing bodies flying, and other eyewitnesses we've spoken to have now been huddled inside restaurants or cafes in the area and told to take shelter. They've been there now for about 3 hours with no word on when they're going to be free. The subway running beneath the area has been shut down, and police in Barcelona have asked anybody in the city to avoid unnecessary travel in case this turns into something more than a contained attack. But right now, the focus of law enforcement is on this restaurant where 2 men are said to be holed up with hostages in the heart of Barcelona. ABC's Scott Goldberg, who's just back from the city, is with us and following the developments with us. Scott?
Police there, Erin, also are asking people to inform their relatives and friends over social media that they're okay, so as not to bog down the phone lines in that city. And through social media, I've been talking to people I know in Barcelona who are safe but essentially trapped in their city right now, whether they're 2.5 miles to the south of where this incident happened, or as we've heard, to the north, a major avenue, the Passeig de Gràcia, the Fifth Avenue of Barcelona, if you will, a major shopping district that's also shut down. And from the video we've seen, the limited video, because the cameras cannot move around the city freely, police have shut down all of the major avenues and streets in the heart of the city as this continues to be an active investigation. We've said it a number of times. This is perhaps the heart of tourism in Europe, if you wanted to call it that. It's one of the, if not the biggest destination in that continent for visitors this time of year. And anyone who has been to Barcelona has certainly been in this area, or you've heard about Las Ramblas. It is an avenue, a pedestrian thoroughfare. It goes from Plaza Catalunya on the north end, where this incident started, down to the water and the famous statue of Christopher Columbus in Barcelona. That's where this van went at 5 o'clock in the evening or thereabouts. A very busy time. It would have been packed with tourists, packed with people getting off of work, and it would have been very easy to do a lot of destruction.
ABC's Scott Goldberg following the developments with us in Barcelona, where at least one person has been killed and 32 others injured. We're waiting for Spanish authorities to give some kind of an update, but they still appear to be dealing with a hostage situation in a restaurant near the crash site where 2 men are said to have taken hostages, and police could keep this going for quite some time as they try to learn the motive of the perpetrators and what else, if anything, may be planned throughout the city. It's telling that the authorities in Barcelona have shut down the subways. They have asked people to avoid unnecessary travel, and they have asked people in the area not to tweet about where the police are going about their work so as not to give anything away. Brad Garrett's formerly of the FBI and now an ABC News consultant. What does that say to you, Brad, about what the authorities are thinking?
Well, I think they are trying, as I mentioned earlier, to buy potentially as much time as they can as they move along, keeping in mind that the links and legs to these 2 guys in the restaurant is that a viable or potential lead or attack material? In other words, are there other people out there connected to them? That's one component. But what will happen here eventually, Erin, is that the tone and tenor of these 2 bad guys will change. They're going to get fed up at some point, or they're going to take some sort of action. But as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be some precipitating event that's going to drive the authorities to perhaps do something. But as long as we can sort of maintain the status quo, it's a great time to gather as much intel as you can, both on the guys and on what's going on inside that restaurant.
Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI and now an ABC News consultant. At least one person has been killed, according to Spanish authorities, and a number of others injured, 32 or so, 10 of which are serious, after this van jumped onto the sidewalk and into a crowd of pedestrians in Las Ramblas, the heart of Barcelona. The two armed men that are holed up in a bar or restaurant following the attack have taken hostages, we're told, and so Spanish police are dealing with them. In the meantime, the rest of the city has virtually been shut down, with mass transit stopping and people urged to avoid any unnecessary travel through the city. We have heard from a number of eyewitnesses who said they saw bodies flying, others who said they've been kept indoors. One guy we spoke to was just finishing up a plate of food in a restaurant. He and about 40 other people have been in there for the last 3 hours or so as the authorities try to lock down the scene and give us a sense of what may have happened. There's no official word as to who carried this out or what their motivation might have been, but there are a number of possibilities given Spain's political climate and the wider problem Europe has had with the Islamic State and other radical ideologies. Our chief foreign correspondent, Terry Moran, joins us again from London. Terry, the possibilities as to who could carry this out and in whose name could be anybody, really.
It could be at this point. The pattern has changed from the 9/11 attacks and the embassy attacks in Africa back in the 1990s and Al-Qaeda's terrorist spectacles, which were carefully planned and organized, funded, and internationally organized. Essentially, the Al-Qaeda operated as a kind of what was once called the Ford Foundation of Terror. You applied with a project, they approved it, they funded you, they give you expertise and training. The response to the 9/11 attacks and the efficiency and the funding and resources that have been devoted to counterterrorism have shut that kind of attack down. So what you have now, as we've seen again and again and again, are these homegrown or localized, self-radicalized. Sometimes they've been groomed or trained in Syria or Libya, but they are very difficult to detect because they are not networked into an international organization. They tend to stay off electronic communications and the internet. These are often loners, people who simply respond to the call of ISIS and other extremist groups, rise up and get in a car, get in a truck, and start killing.
ABC's Terry Moran, our chief foreign correspondent, live with us from London and our foreign desk. Terry, thanks so much for your time and insight on this as we follow yet another deadly car ramming attack in Europe. We've seen them in the United States, most recently in Charlottesville, Virginia, but this one played out in the heart of Barcelona and one of the most heavily trafficked areas of the city. ABC's Scott Goldberg knows that well. He's with us live. Scott?
Erin, it's really impossible to understate how popular this area is. It's a transit hub, Plaza Catalunya, on the north end of Las Ramblas, where this attack happened, where it began with a white van, jumping a curb, plowing into people. Police say as it continued down Las Ramblas, this very popular pedestrian pathway that goes through the old quarter in Barcelona, that at least one person was killed. 32 people injured, 10 of them seriously, and police have told us that these are preliminary details, and these details are subject to change. There are some reports, unconfirmed at this point, from media in Catalunya saying there was a second van tied to this attack that was found about 70 kilometers outside of Barcelona or away from where this would have happened. Again, this is a local report. It hasn't been verified by ABC News yet, but this is how so much of this information has been coming in based on local reports, not verified by police, who have been very careful with the information they've brought forward. They had a very brief appearance where authorities talked to reporters to give the details about those numbers. One person killed, 32 injured, and they called those provisional details, suggesting that they thought those numbers would change. And they eventually called this a terror attack after first just saying that they were investigating it as a terror attack. They later made that distinction and said they've activated their terror protocol. This is a city that would have had protocols certainly in place like any major city, but certainly when you are the top tourist destination in Europe or one of the top tourist destinations in Europe, you're going to plan for this. And the police presence in this area, I can tell you, when I was there a couple of weeks ago, you cannot walk a block without seeing police, many of them heavily armed. So when this happened there, they would have been able to respond immediately. The fact that so much of this city is still cordoned off, though, Las Ramblas and major avenues that spread out from there, spread out from Plaza Catalunya like spokes, the fact that people are being told to stay inside, so far after the fact now, we're talking a couple of hours since this began, suggests that there is great concern that remains. The possible hostage situation we've talked about, one armed person inside a restaurant, and now, again, according to some local reports not confirmed by ABC News, the fact that a second van may have been linked to this and found about 70 kilometers outside of the city suggests this perimeter could be expanding even more.
ABC's Scott Goldberg, who was just back from Barcelona, and Spanish authorities have now identified the name of the man who rented the van that was used in the attack. That doesn't necessarily mean he's responsible, but they do now have a name. Dries Okabir is the name that Spanish authorities have been giving us. They say he's the one who rented the van, but you can imagine they're now going to run down everything they can possibly find out about him. Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, they have a name of the person who rented the van. I guess that's a good starting point.
It's a very good starting point, and the investigation is going to be moving even faster now with regards to that aspect. And we were talking before about an organizational exercise and various teams. Now you have a group that is just going to focus on that individual and everything about him, his life, his associates, friends, neighbors, everything. They're going to dig into that. And as Brad has been saying, the longer that the hostage situation plays out, they're gathering more intelligence. This name and the work that they're going to do on that person is going to be very valuable to that hostage situation, because there's always the chance that they can develop information or people that will help law enforcement that could help with a hostage situation.
That is ABC's law enforcement consultant, Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, as Spanish authorities now have a name of the man who rented the van that was used in the Barcelona attack. And authorities are now trying to run the information down. Let's bring back Brad Garrett, another of our law enforcement consultants, formerly of the Bureau as well. And this Dries Okabir, as he's been identified to us, Brad, seems to be quite young as 20, but certainly in his early 20s. Another young man that seems to have for whatever reason, taken up the call to carry out an attack like this?
Ideal age. If you look at who Al-Qaeda, ISIS target, it's older teenagers or young adults, because they are at a juncture typically in their life where they may well be lost. They're looking for something to join. They want somebody to tell them what to do. They've got a horrible family life, whatever it might be, but they're vulnerable to organizations and groups like ISIS. And so once they can get somebody on board, whether this is just over the internet or more formal, my guess is if there's been conversations between the two guys in the restaurant and ISIS, it may be very informal or indirect, where they've just used the group as inspiration to sort of give themselves the cause and purpose in life. Because keep in mind, this is all about having a cause, being concrete, being in charge, being able to sort of make a name for yourself, as horrible as your name would be attached to this. And that's why you see younger people involved. It also will tell me, based on the age, quite possibly, that this won't be sophisticated, that the links to him and the other van 70-some kilometers away, who does that belong to? How did that van get there? That the players involved and maybe even both the people now in the restaurant, if he's one of them, are identified. So that this group, if it is a group, or individuals attached either directly or indirectly, the police may know who they are. And it may also tell them that these people aren't trained. They are not sophisticated, which is going to be my guess, which gives the tactical people even more advantage as to what they might be able to do if, in fact, they can make a dynamic entry and take these two guys out going into the restaurant.
That is Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant, as authorities in Barcelona have a suspect identified, at least the man who rented the van used in a terror attack to kill at least one person and injure some 32 others. The authorities believe that they have that van driver holed up in a bar that's surrounded by police. Earlier, we were told that the driver and perhaps an accomplice, two men, in fact, had taken some hostages in that bar. Although we don't have any confirmed images coming from there, so we don't know what the status is as the authorities work to bring this to some kind of resolution. The government is saying that one person dead, 32 injured. And those numbers are very likely to change and perhaps sadly increase as they are able to confirm more information. But so far the focus has been on this bar where the authorities have concentrated their hostage negotiations. I'm Erin Katersky. You're listening to live coverage from ABC News. I want to turn to ABC's Scott Goldberg, who's with us and just back from Barcelona as he follows these developments with us. Scott.
Well, Erin, I'm thinking what a lot of people are thinking right now. I was in that area just a couple of weeks ago. We have a lot of colleagues who have traveled to Barcelona. People around the world have this city at the top of their list of places to visit, especially this time of year. So a very popular place. And it also makes you think of the car that drove through Times Square here in New York not too long ago in another sort of deliberate act. And just how impossible really it is to guard against this sort of thing in a complete way. Where this happened in Barcelona, in the heart of the city, Plaza Catalunya is a place with a large fountain. It is a transit hub. It's a place where you would see at 5 o'clock in the evening when this happened, a lot of people coming out of work to join the huge crowds of tourists that are there throughout the day who would be looking at maps, looking at their phones, trying to get oriented in this city they're visiting, and essentially would have been sitting ducks. They're surrounded by roads in that area. There's a major department store that's very popular. And then just south of that plaza where this started, there is Las Ramblas, the famous road that goes down to the water in Barcelona, and that's where we've seen video of the van plowing people over. One person dead, at least one person dead, 32 injured, according to the police. They called those a while ago provisional details, suggesting the numbers have changed, but so far, that's where it stands.
ABC Scott Goldberg following these developments with us out of Barcelona. It was about 5 o'clock on a summer evening when all of this unfolded. People were in the cafes and the restaurants and hanging out in this densely packed area that Scott described when a van jumped onto the sidewalk and just plowed into a crowd of people. We have seen this before. The authorities have identified a suspect said to be about 20 years old of Moroccan descent that they're working with, and they are trying to figure out now whether that's the same person that's holed up in a bar or restaurant with a possible accomplice and who has taken hostages. A short time ago, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson spoke out about this in the first official reaction from the U.S. government.
Well, good afternoon. I'd like to start by acknowledging the incident in Barcelona, which has the hallmarks, it appears, of yet another terrorist attack. We offer our condolences to the loss of life and the injuries that have occurred to so many innocent people yet again. We will continue to monitor the situation. We stand ready to assist law enforcement, national security authorities in Spain. Our consulates in Barcelona and our entire Mission Spain team are currently assisting Americans in Spain who are affected by these events. We ask U.S. citizens in the area to let your loved ones know you are safe. Terrorists around the world should know the United States and our allies are resolved to find you and bring you to justice.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson moments ago in the first official reaction from the United States government to the terror attack in Barcelona, echoing what we have heard from the Spanish authorities, to use social media to let people know you're okay. They don't want to tie up the phone lines. They have also urged everybody to stay out of the area. They've shut down mass transit. In some cases, people are holed up in restaurants and bars nearby because the authorities didn't want people onto the streets. The eyewitnesses that we've been able to speak to spoke about being just holed up there for 3 hours or so, and other eyewitnesses spoke of what they saw and heard at the moment of the attack itself. And my colleague Tom Yamas spoke with an eyewitness visiting Barcelona from Australia, Susan McLean.
So, Susan, tell me where you were and what you saw.
Okay, so we were about 100 metres down from the square where all this unfolded, and we saw this tidal wave of people running and screaming towards us. It was just like these floodgates have opened. They were screaming in Spanish. We had no idea what was going on. They were very, very distressed, and a lot of them were yelling out, shooting, shooting. So we quickly ran into a shop. I momentarily lost my husband, which was quite scary because we got separated. And then we were all locked in a shop. I must say that, and I guess that, and I understand as a former police officer that the police had to deal with what was going on, but there was so poor communication because even after about 40 minutes when we managed to get ourselves out of the shop around the corner to our hotel, there were still hordes of people walking up towards the actual scene. So there was no police actually cordoning off streets and telling people to stay away at that point. So it was a very concerning situation.
Could you hear the impact of the car hitting those people?
We couldn't hear the...
This is an ABC News special report.
And good afternoon, I'm Tom Yamas. We continue to follow that breaking news out of Europe, a horrific terrorist attack on the streets of Barcelona. Police and eyewitnesses tell us that a van has plowed into at least 100 people in one of the busiest tourist areas of that city. It's called Las Ramblas. It's essentially the Fifth Avenue of Barcelona. And there were several people, because this happened around 5 o'clock p.m. this early evening there in Spain. Now, we had a chance to speak with an eyewitness who saw it all. His story is very striking and very graphic.
Seconds after it shut the taxi door, heard screams of people sort of up to my left, and when I looked up, saw the white van, and it must have been doing sort of 100 kilometers, 80 to 100 kilometers an hour down a pedestrian sort of walkway, and just sort of just knocking people over at high speed. And there were people under the van just kept going, and so he kind of stopped opposite to where I was standing. Which is sort of, and then just kept going again. So the van had stopped probably from the impact of the people, of hitting all the people, and then kept going. At which point we realized that it was, quite a dangerous situation, and kind of ran towards one of the open stores where these guys took us in and shut their shutters down. For about 30 minutes, while we were in the shop, we heard that this person had sort of fled on foot. We've left the shop. This is now probably an hour after the incident, and walked back we're trying to get to our car, which is parked near La Rambla. And then we heard about five gunshots go off. So we ran back into a second building where these construction workers sort of took us in. We were there for about 20 minutes. And have come out of that now and are walking, trying to get back towards the car. But there's a heavy police presence in the area. I mean, I'm just standing on the corner of one of the main roads and La Rambla, and every single block has got two policemen on it. So the city's on lockdown at the moment.
And Brandon, so when you run into that restaurant, do you know how this van came to a stop? Did it crash? And what was the scene like on the streets?
It stopped, I think, just under the force of the people that were on the floor, and then kept going. So I don't know what happened after what I saw. because we ran into the shop. But when I saw it, he was traveling at high speed, just sort of knocking. There were people being flung into the air. He was driving that fast, and then slowed down when there were. And the front of the van was pretty damaged. I mean, it's difficult to recall right now, but the front of the van was pretty damaged, and it looked like it had sort of hit a wall almost. So it was completely damaged at the front of the van, and I figured that was maybe what stopped it. But then he kept going. He'd stopped and then kept going again a second time, and that's when I kind of sort of just ran away from the scene.
That was Brendan Sissing, a tourist who saw the entire thing happen. As you heard Brendan say there, he heard 5 gunshots. And we are under the assumption right now that there's still very much an active scene, that the driver and at least another suspect ran into a restaurant. They're armed. Our chief foreign correspondent, Terry Moran, has been following that development.
That's right, Tom. This is an ongoing situation, what looks to be a 2-phase terror attack, as Spanish police are calling it. The first, that van attack that we just heard about, an appalling driving through that pedestrian crowd. This second, a hostage situation, police sources confirmed to ABC News, in a restaurant not far from where that van attack occurred. 2 gunmen apparently entered the restaurant. There have been shots fired, as our eyewitness has said. Right now, police are negotiating, and local media are reporting that they have surrounded this area. They are clearing all of the streets, telling people to shelter inside and telling others to stay out of this district.
Barcelona officials telling us at least 1 person dead, 32 people injured. They do expect the death toll to rise. And here's one of the reasons why. If we heard from that eyewitness who said that van was traveling at least 80 kilometers per hour, that's about 50 miles per hour, if not more, hitting at least 100 people who were in this plaza. And this is a type of terrorist attack we have seen before. I want to bring in our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross. Brian, you see these images. You heard that story of how this van entered into the walkway. Your thoughts?
Well, there's been no claim of responsibility by ISIS, but this has all the trademarks of an ISIS attack. And in fact, already we're seeing online ISIS followers celebrating the attack. There's been no official claim of responsibility. We know where that generally comes from. And it comes just 2 weeks after ISIS followers predicted an attack coming in Spain. Now, we also know, Tom, that the police have told us in Spain that they know the name of the man who rented the van, and they're seeking him. He may or may not have been the driver of the van, but they're seeking that one individual. But as you say, this has the trademarks of similar ISIS attacks going back to Nice, France, last Bastille Day, where 86 people were killed, and then the Christmas market in Berlin, where about 24 people were killed, and then the 2 attacks in London on the London Bridge and the Westminster Bridge. ISIS has regularly urged its followers to use whatever they can to kill innocent civilians, to find prominent places like the Ramblas, and then to carry out attacks with vehicles.
It no doubt follows that pattern. We just saw a car attack here in America just this week, and I want to bring in our senior White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega. She's traveling with the president today. And Cecilia, we know as the president deals with all the fallout from Charlottesville, he's also closely monitoring this situation.
His chief of staff, John Kelly, is keeping him abreast on the situation there in Barcelona. So we do know that he has been briefed. Tom, we've also just moments ago got some pretty strong words from Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who is at the State Department, saying that this has, quote, the hallmarks, it appears, of yet another terrorist attack. He sent a message, what he said, directly to terrorists around the world. We are resolved to find you and to bring you to justice. He says that the United States stands ready to assist the authorities in Barcelona, and the State Department also asking any Americans there to stay away from that active scene there in Barcelona and to reach out to their families to let them know that indeed they are safe. No word yet directly from the president. Tom, the First Lady is the first person to comment officially from this White House with a tweet today saying thoughts and prayers to Barcelona.
Cecilia Vega for us. If you're just joining our coverage right now, we continue to follow the breaking news out of Barcelona. Police and eyewitnesses tell us someone has taken a van and has plowed into several people in one of the busiest tourist areas of Barcelona. This happened around 5 o'clock p.m. their time there in Spain. And as of right now, we know that there is 1 person dead, at least 32 injured. The pictures are incredibly graphic. The stories that eyewitnesses have told us were that there were at least 100 people on a pedestrian walkway, and this van turned off a side street and just plowed into people. Some people were going airborne, several others trapped underneath this van. Officials there telling us they do expect the death toll to rise. We're going to be continuing to monitoring this active and very breaking situation throughout the afternoon, and we'll have a full update with our entire team later tonight on World News Tonight with David Muir. We thank you for watching. We now return to our scheduled programming.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Relevant gives you negotiation information, because what you try to do in these negotiations is humanize them as much as possible. Despite what these guys have done, they're still human beings, and they still may have families, and they may still have kids. And all of those things are used as tools to get negotiators to sort of get inside the head of the people inside that restaurant.
Brad Garrett's formerly of the FBI and now an ABC News consultant. I'm Erin Katersky. You're listening to live coverage from ABC News. 1 dead at least and 32 injured. 10 of those injuries said to be serious after a white van jumped onto the sidewalk in the heart of Las Ramblas in Barcelona, running down a group of pedestrians in what authorities had at first called a terror attack. They've now said they are not sure of the exact motive, but they are treating it as if it was a terror attack. And we've gotten word from Spanish television that one person has been arrested. We had also heard from Spanish authorities that they had identified the person who rented the van that was used in the attack. No word if that's one and the same. But they are still trying to run down all of these leads, in addition to grappling with a hostage situation at a nearby bar where it's believed the driver of the van and a possible accomplice fled on foot after the crash. They took hostages, and now negotiations are underway. The White House has, of course, been kept informed, and the Secretary of State, the Department of Homeland Security, have issued statements. Let's go to Washington and ABC's Arlette Saenz. Arlette?
Hey, Erin. Yeah, President Trump is still in Bedminster, New Jersey, and he's receiving updates from his Chief of Staff, General John Kelly, who's being kept updated on the situation and relaying that information to the president. We also had Secretary of State Rex Tillerson a little while ago over at the State Department alongside General Mattis, the Defense Secretary. Tillerson went ahead and offered his condolences for the loss of life and injuries and said so many people, yet again, innocent people, have been injured. He said that the incident have the hallmarks, it appears, of yet another terror attack, and said that the State Department is ready to offer any assistance to Spanish authorities that they may need.
ABC's Arlette Saenz with us from Washington. Just seeing a tweet from President Trump that the United States condemns the terror attack in Barcelona, Spain, and will do whatever is necessary to help. Be tough and strong. We love you. A tweet from President Trump just a second ago. Arlette, any word whether any Americans were among the victims yet?
Well, right now they're still trying to determine whether there were any Americans that were involved, and there has been a message sent out by the U.S. consulate in Barcelona saying that they're working to determine if there's any U.S. citizens affected, and they're ready to provide any assistance. They're also warning U.S. citizens that are in the area to stay clear of the area and to let their family and friends know if they are in safety.
All right, Arlette Saenz, keep us up to date for any movement out of Washington where she is, as the U.S. and the American law enforcement agencies continue to monitor this. Police in this country are taking a look at any Spanish-linked sites that they may have to give some extra attention to here in New York. That would include the UN mission, the Spanish consulate. Of course, Times Square here in New York has had a vehicle ramming attack, although not ascribed to terrorists, but a guy who was on high on K2 at the time. But be that as it may, they're going to check bollards there, and just to make sure they've covered all their bases as our focus continues to be on what's gone on in Barcelona, where 1 is dead at least and 32 injured following this attack that unfolded at 5 o'clock in the evening, local time, a summer evening with a lot of people out on Las Ramblas to just enjoy the night. And that area is now all cordoned off. And we have not yet been able to see images from the restaurant where the hostage negotiations are taking place, but we have seen images of police with long guns out, searching shop to shop and place to place. ABC's Scott Goldberg is here, and Scott, the police had also mentioned a second van that may somehow be connected to all of this.
Yeah, this is interesting, Erin. This is coming from local reports that I've been reading in Barcelona newspapers, and local media there are reporting that there's at least one theory that in addition to the van used in the attack on Las Ramblas, there was a second van that might have been waiting as a getaway vehicle. That van they found about 40 miles away from where the attack happened, and that's part of the ongoing investigation to see if, in fact, that is related. The first van, they said, was a rental van, the one that was actually used in the attack. Was this planned to the extent where there was a driver in the first van that hit all of the people on Las Ramblas, and after he fled there, was the plan to get into the second van and flee? And did the plan break down? Did the driver of the first van end up going into the restaurant where he's now believed to be holding hostages, and police are involved in that negotiation, while the second person bailed and took that second van 40 miles outside the city where it was recovered? Or, just where does that fit into the investigation? So all of these are the pieces of the puzzle they're trying to put together right now, and it is clearly not a straight line they're able to draw at this point, evidenced by the fact that they have backtracked from that initial assessment, Erin, at first saying this was a confirmed terror attack, now saying they cannot say for sure what the motive might have been.
Still treating it as a terror attack, though. It's ABC's Scott Goldberg, who's quite familiar, just back from Barcelona himself, following developments with us. This is live coverage from ABC News. I'm Erin Katursky. There has been what appears to be a deliberate ramming of people by a car in Barcelona, right in the heart of that city's historic district, Las Ramblas. It happened a number of hours ago now. It has left one person dead and 32 injured. The authorities believe that the driver of the van and a possible accomplice fled the crash site on foot and into a nearby restaurant or bar, and took hostages where negotiations are underway. A moment ago, President Trump on Twitter said that he condemned the attack. The United States has made clear it is monitoring and also available to send resources to Spain as needed. There's been no confirmed motive for this. At one point, the Spanish authorities definitively called it a terror attack. In recent moments, they have backed away from that, saying they don't know what the motive is. But these hostage negotiations have been underway for some time now as the authorities try to sort out the victims. No word if any Americans were among the tourists in Las Ramblas at the time, but we've talked to several eyewitnesses who said they heard noises. They have they've seen the bodies that went flying once the van came through, and yet another vehicle-borne attack. So many have happened, not only in Europe, but also in this country, most recently in Charlottesville, Virginia. Although the motive there certainly may be different than what has gone on in Barcelona. But nonetheless, it has become a very deadly preferred method of attack. And now negotiations are underway with the apparent perpetrators. A moment ago, my colleague, ABC's Tom Yamas, spoke to an eyewitness named Brendan Sissing, who's right near the scene.
Seconds after it shut the taxi door, heard screams of people sort of up to my left. And when I looked up, saw the white van, and it must have been doing sort of 100 kilometers, 80 to 100 kilometers an hour down a pedestrian sort of walkway, and just sort of just knocking people over at high speed. And there were people under the van just kept going, and so he kind of stopped opposite to where I was standing, which is sort of and then just kept going again. So the van had stopped probably from the impact of the people, of hitting all the people, and then kept going. At which point we realized that it was, quite a dangerous situation, and kind of ran towards one of the open stores where these guys took us in and shut their shutters down. For about 30 minutes, while we were in the shop, we heard that this person had sort of fled on foot. We left the shop. This is now probably an hour after the incident, and walked back we're trying to get to our car, which is parked near La Rambla. And then we heard about five gunshots go off. So we ran back into a second building where these construction workers sort of took us in. We were there for about 20 minutes have come out of that now and are walking, trying to get back towards the car. But there's a heavy police presence in the area. I mean, I'm just standing on the corner of one of the main roads and La Rambla, and every single block has got 2 policemen on it. So the city's on lockdown at the moment.
And Brandon, so when you run into that restaurant, do you know how this van came to a stop? Did it crash? And what was the scene like on the streets?
It stopped, I think, just under the force of the people that were on the floor, and then kept going. So I don't know what happened after what I saw, because we ran into the shop. But when I saw it, he was traveling at high speed, just sort of knocking. There were people being flung into the air. He was driving that fast, and then slowed down when there were. And the front of the van was pretty damaged. I mean, it's difficult to recall right now, but the front of the van was pretty damaged, and it looked like it had sort of hit a wall almost. So it was completely damaged at the front of the van, and I figured that was maybe what stopped it. But then he kept going. He'd stopped and then kept going again the second time, and that's when I kind of sort of just ran away from the scene.
Brandon Sissing speaking there to my colleague ABC's Tom Yamas, another eyewitness, a very graphic description of the van just mowing through this crowd of people in Barcelona. Officially, 1 is dead and 32 injured. Very worrying scenes that we've seen, with blood splattered on the sidewalk and a number of broken bodies being tended to by passersby and the emergency services. The Spanish authorities said they have identified the suspect who rented the van used in the attack. They are also confirming an arrest now, and said that no longer is anybody holed up in a bar where we were told there was a hostage situation underway. I want to bring back Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI. Steve, we just don't have any images, so we don't know what's happening, but it's possible maybe this is coming to some kind of resolution.
That's exactly what that last statement that you just read about there's no longer a hostage situation and there was one arrest that has been made. Now we have to think, could that have been the driver of the van who crashed into the people and then ran over to the restaurant with a gun and took hostages, and it's now been resolved? That is very possible. And if it is, that is good news for everybody, law enforcement, the public. And however, law enforcement's not going to let their guard down until they have truly gotten to the bottom of what really happened here. Whoever's in custody between that person and the name of the person who rented the van, if they're the same person, then makes it easier. But if not, they need to continue to figure out, what are these individuals up to? What were they doing? Who are they in contact with? Are there others out there, as we've seen throughout Europe, where there are multiple conspiracies that are occurring when there's an attack? And they're going to need to figure out, if that's the case, does that pose another threat to the public?
Well, and then we had this other report from Spanish National Police that at a nearby police checkpoint, or a part of the cordon, that a car seemed to have hit police officers staffing this checkpoint, and they're trying to figure out if that's related. It wouldn't be unheard of, I suppose, to have kind of this secondary attack, if that's what it is, Steve.
Absolutely. That would not be unheard of. And they have to constantly assume the worst and then scale back from there. So in this case, if there was some kind of incident at the police checkpoint, they have to think that this is part of a coordinated attack and approach it that way until they can figure out what truly occurred with that checkpoint situation. If it is related, then that's part of the overall investigation. If it's not, then they just put that aside and investigate that separately. But they have to approach it as if it is part of a coordinated attack, because the worst case scenario, you have to think that way, because there could be so many other people involved, so many other threats that are existing right now in Spain, and you don't want to let your guard down.
Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. Spanish authorities say there is no longer anybody held up in a bar. So presumably this hostage situation or whatever it was near the van crash site is over with a suspect in custody. Let's go to our foreign desk. ABC's Tom Rivers is monitoring from there. Tom?
I tell you, Erin, there's so many threads to this story. You think back to Charlie Hebdo when we had 2 different separate attacks, and if you want to throw in the third one, the killing of a policewoman as well. Different parts of this may be all linked together, or they could be separate incidents. 2 different vans they're looking at now. And as Steve was saying, the name they have of the individual who rented one of the vans, is that the individual that is now in custody? We don't know, but it's going to take some time to tie this all together. But I tell you, it's chilling to see some of the pictures coming across the desk. It reminds me of Nice just over a year ago, and the horrific scene, the horrific injuries of vehicles impacting people there. Sadly, a similar situation in Barcelona today.
Simply insidious, and the images are equally horrific with broken bodies on the ground and blood splattered on the pavement as this van went up onto the sidewalk area in Las Ramblas, the historic district in Barcelona that is unavoidable by tourists and residents, and it is now the scene of carnage with at least 1 dead and 32 injured, and the government expecting that the toll will increase. The Vice President, Mike Pence, has just been briefed on the situation by his national security advisor. President Trump has tweeted about it. Let's turn to Washington with ABC's Arlette Saenz. Arlette?
That's right, Erin. President Trump is still up in Bedminster, New Jersey on his working vacation, and his Chief of Staff, General John Kelly, who just a few weeks ago was head of the Department of Homeland Security, he's keeping the president updated on the developing situation in Barcelona. We heard from Secretary of State Rex Tillerson a few moments ago, where he offered his condolences for the loss of life and any injuries that have been sustained. He also said that this has the hallmarks of what it appears to be yet another terror attack. So the U.S. State Department watching this very closely. Right now, there's also a lot of concern about whether there are any U.S. citizens who might be in the area. The U.S. consulate in Barcelona putting out a statement urging any U.S. citizens to avoid the areas and also to inform their friends and family on their status and whether they are safe. We also know that the Department of Homeland Security, Acting Secretary Elaine Duke, she has been briefed on the situation, and the Department of Homeland Security has reached out to Spanish authorities, and they're standing ready to offer any support. And she said in a statement, "We will not let terrorism become the new normal."
ABC's Arlette Saenz with us from Washington as the government of the United States follows the developments in Barcelona right along with the FBI and a number of police agencies across this country. And as Spanish police try to bring this to some resolution, I want to turn back to Scott Goldberg of ABC News, who's just back from Barcelona and who's been monitoring what Spanish police have been saying. We have 1 arrest at least. We have potentially a second van and some conflicting information about how to characterize this.
Right, Erin, although the latest tweet from police in Barcelona says that, as you mentioned, there is nobody left being barricaded inside a bar in Barcelona, and they say 1 man's detained. They're treating this like a terror attack. Treating it is the operative word here, because earlier they had confirmed it was a terror attack, and then they backed off that, saying they didn't know what the motive was, but they are going ahead and treating this like a terror attack. And they have also tweeted now on their official Twitter feed that they are now going through restaurants and bars along Las Ramblas, and they are evacuating people from them, saying they will accompany people out. So it sounds certainly like this situation is winding down with someone in custody, with there no longer being a hostage situation at a bar or restaurant in Barcelona, and now word that police are going into the buildings along that strip that had been absolutely shut down. They're escorting people out. So it would seem like sometime soon we are going to get resolution.
And we had spoken to an eyewitness who had been holed up in a restaurant. He'd been there for 3 hours. And so it had been quite a long time while this operation was ongoing.
Yeah, it was a very long time. I mean, this started at 5 in the evening in Barcelona. It's now about 8:20 in Barcelona, and we're starting to get some of the resolution now. I talked to a friend who was via social media, told me that they were stuck in the office 2.5 miles south of where this happened. We spoke to someone on the Passeig de Gracia, a major avenue north of where this happened, that had been shut down. You mentioned there was another incident with a vehicle on the Diagonal Avenue that kind of cuts across the northern end of Barcelona. So that's another couple miles away in a different direction. So virtually, you had this entire city, one of the most popular, if not the most popular tourist destinations in Europe, on lockdown for the better part of 3 hours.
Stunning developments out of Barcelona, the scene of the latest apparent terror attack where a vehicle had been turned into a weapon, in this case a white van that had jumped a sidewalk and into a crowd of people out on an early summer evening. Just spectacular weather from what we had seen. No indication that any of this was going to happen, but police quickly jumped into terror mode, and with long guns, officers began going cafe to cafe, searching for the driver of a white van who had fled potentially with an accomplice on foot into a restaurant, but now authorities have denied there was ever any hostage situation. They said that they had arrested someone that they are treating as a terrorist. That person would be responsible for killing at least one person and injuring 32 others. The government officials in Spain have worried, though, that toll may rise. Police confirm, though, that somebody's been arrested in the Barcelona van attack. That person is now being treated as a terrorist. I'm Erin Katersky. You're listening to live coverage from ABC News. Back to our foreign desk with ABC's Tom Rivers, who's monitoring this situation. Tom, any reaction coming in from across Europe now as Barcelona joins the list of many European cities to see an attack like this?
Sadly, that is the case, and it's very, very predictable. We have Emmanuel Macron. And think of all the attacks that have happened on French soil. He says solidarity with the people of Barcelona. Similar sentiments here expressed by Theresa May, the British Prime Minister. People are so, if you will, angry over here in Europe. And the problem is, what can you do when somebody gets behind a vehicle and uses that as a weapon? It is difficult. It is something people shake their heads. They don't understand it. But sadly, it's become the new normal, if you will. If you want to go down the list of the various attacks, it is a sad, sad tale of what we've experienced, really going back about 2.5 years now.
Tom Rivers of ABC News, who's at our foreign desk in London, will soon be off to Barcelona in order to monitor from there yet another terror attack or apparent terror attack in Europe. The official word from Spanish police is that they don't know the motive here, but they said they are treating the suspect that's in custody as a terrorist. And ABC's Brian Ross has been talking about some of this and what this attack looks like to my colleague, ABC's Tom Yamas.
There's been no claim of responsibility by ISIS, but this has all the trademarks of an ISIS attack. And in fact, already we're seeing online ISIS followers celebrating the attack. There's been no official claim of responsibility. We know where that generally comes from. And it comes just 2 weeks after ISIS followers predicted an attack coming in Spain. Now, we also know that the police have told us in Spain that they know the name of the man who rented the van, and they're seeking him. He may or may not have been the driver of the van, but they're seeking that one individual. This has the trademarks of similar ISIS attacks going back to Nice, France, last Bastille Day, where 86 people were killed, and then the Christmas market in Berlin, where about 24 people were killed, and then the 2 attacks in London on the London Bridge and the Westminster Bridge. ISIS has regularly urged its followers to use whatever they can to kill innocent civilians, to find prominent places like the Ramblas, and then to carry out attacks with vehicles.
Our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross, speaking to my colleague Tom Yamas a short time ago. A Catalan government official has now said that 13 people were killed and at least 50 injured in this attack at Las Ramblas in Barcelona. 13 people killed, as many as 50 injured, according to a government official in the Catalan region of Spain, following this vehicle ramming attack in Barcelona. ABC's Scott Goldberg, following some of these developments with us. Scott.
Yeah, Erin, that coming from a government official, retweeted by the police on their official feed. So this is confirming some of the initial media reports that we were hearing, around a dozen dead, now saying 13 dead, more than 50 injured. So this is quite a tragedy on a scale that we feared as we started reporting this. Many of these developments had not been something we could confirm along the way, and up to this point, the police are still, it seems, having a bit of a debate about whether to call this a terror attack or not, after first confirming it was, now saying they are simply treating it that way. One person's in custody. Police did say those numbers, the initial numbers, would likely change, and now 13 dead, more than 50 injured. They're not saying if that is a final count, but one would expect they might change again. In addition to the toll changing, Scott, some of the circumstances appear to have changed, with a suspect in custody and authorities saying no one's holed up in a bar where it had earlier been reported that there were hostages. Right. Well, does that mean they were able to take care of that situation and free hostages, or does that mean that there were not hostages to begin with? There were reports also, Erin, of a shooting outside a major department store where all of this happened. Police went on the record to say there was no shootout there. So again, it's been the fog of the aftermath of this event. The facts have not been easily confirmed by police, apparently, and we're trying to get the most up-to-date information we can from them. But we do know now that there is no longer, if there were to begin with, there is no longer a hostage situation in a bar in the middle of Barcelona, and they say one person has been detained. And also the police in Catalonia say they're evacuating all of Las Ramblas. I mean, that's the heart of the city being evacuated. Right. This is the road that cuts right down the middle of the old part of the city, the Gothic Quarter on one side, another very densely populated neighborhood on the other. This is where you would have had lots of tourists, there are so many businesses, so many hotels and restaurants there. They now say police are accompanying people out of those buildings. Except for Will Acco, who we spoke to a bit earlier, and he's still on lockdown now with us from where, Will? The restaurant where you've been?
Yeah, still in the same restaurant. I've been for the last 4.5 hours. Still here.
Any indication from police when you might be able to go?
I think the police came about 15 minutes ago and spoke to the manager and said we're going to be here for at least another hour because they're going to come around and check our IDs. Because obviously, apparently, there's still one suspect they haven't caught. So I think it is still going to be quite a while before we actually leave this place.
How's everyone in there doing?
Same, man. I think everyone's just ready to go, just waiting for the police to finish what they need to do and then finally get out of here. I think everyone's quite calm.
Have they said anything to you as to what has gone on around you or why you're being held where you are?
No, I mean, they haven't really come into the restaurant. Well, I see a couple of police outside, but they haven't actually come inside. They've come to the door and spoken to the manager a couple of times, but we're not still sure what's going on. And earlier, about an hour early, we saw people moving up the street, so we thought we'd been evacuated, but we're still here.
Still there, although word is, for what comfort it may provide from the emergency services in Catalonia, that they are beginning to go place by place to free people like you who've been locked in these cafes and restaurants for hours now. I can't imagine it's been a very comfortable experience.
Yeah, no, it's not what I planned when we started today. But, I mean, the most important thing is I think it has kind of died down. We are safe. We're just waiting to see when we can leave. The next issue is how we actually get home. Because I'm assuming the metros will be closed. I don't know how we're going to get a taxi. So that's the next issue.
Well, good luck, and we hope you're able to get out of there safely soon. Will Acco, who's in Barcelona and in one of the restaurants that police had shut down, and he and 40 others have been locked in there, for almost 4 hours, he said now, given the police search. At one point, a suspect has been arrested, and so police may feel they are still while on guard and on alert, able to now relax their posture just a bit to try and bring some of what has gone on in Barcelona to a resolution. To bring you one more time up to speed, after a white van plowed into a crowd of people in the heart of Barcelona and Catalonia Square, it has now left 13 people dead and 50 at least injured. A number of those injuries are said to be quite serious. The authorities have arrested one suspect. If there ever was, they say there is no longer a hostage situation in a bar. They are treating this as a terror attack, although they have not officially ascribed a motive to what has gone on in Barcelona. For all of my colleagues, I'm Erin Katersky. You've been listening to live coverage from ABC News.